She's
Pop up.
not in my lap. She's in Aunt's lap.
Stealing the show. All right. Well, I mean, if we'll go ahead and get started then. If you're good to go.
Yeah.
Awesome. We'll just jump right into it then. We have Becky Kieran. Is that the right pronunciation? Okay.
Kirian. Yep.
Kirian. Okay. I always wondered because I've never actually talked to you. I don't think in virtual person or regular person.
Yeah.
But you are a registered dietitian with a bunch of letters behind you.
Yeah.
So we can get into a lot of that stuff, but first, I mean, I'd just like to give people the opportunity to, who is Becky Kirian?
Yeah. So like you said, I'm a registered dietitian. And right now I work in Juneau, Alaska. I work at a hospital here, but I also have my own business, Centum Cento, where I work with clients with nutrition. And my biggest thing I would say across the board is everything I do is science-based and everything I do is sustainable. So like I am the opposite of things you see on Instagram of like, oh, here, do this fad diet, do this supplement, all this stuff. Like that's the opposite of who I am. And I feel like everything that I try to like work with people is just about like balance and enjoying life and meeting your goals in a healthy, sustainable way. So yeah, I feel like that's kind of about like my business side of me, and I try to use that on my personal side too.
So what got you to that point? Because I know when we first, you met my wife, Cass. That's really, and I think you talked about social media. This is probably one of the better things that could ever come out of social media, because you guys did a powerlifting competition that you guys are competing together or against each other, however that works. And then she started following you on social media, and it'd be like literally 4 times a week. Babe, look at her pictures. Like, look at all the cool shit she's doing.
Look at her ass. Was more so.
So like you were traveling, you know, and so what landed you in Alaska? Because obviously the picture that we've discussed this earlier before we started, that you know the backdrop is about as good as it gets, and some of the stuff you post on social media is just incredible. So, but
Beautiful.
What got you to Alaska? And
Yeah, so kind of funny. I never in my entire life would have imagined I'd be living in Alaska. I grew up in the middle of like nowhere, Northwest Ohio. Like if you Google map like where I grew up, it literally auto corrects it to a trail, like middle of nowhere. And then, so once I became a dietitian, I moved literally the day after graduation, started work at a long-term care facility in Columbus, Ohio, like a company at a few nursing homes. And I worked there for almost a year, and then some shit went down where I was like, this is not like a good work environment. Like, I know I'm young, professional, but I know this is like not appropriate. Like not conducive to my growth as a professional. So I started looking into different jobs, and I like just on a whim, like Googled travel, like whatever. And I saw this company, Dietitians on Demand, and I was like, oh, they have travel dietitians? Like I thought it was literally only like nursing. So I was like, whatever, I'm just gonna like inquire. And I inquired, and they're like, yeah, like things are pretty like much like on demand. Like if you're able to like take a job, like it's like 2 weeks. I was like, all right. So I was like, told them I was interested, and literally they're like, okay, we have a contract. So I put in my 2 weeks notice, like packed up all my stuff, and 2 weeks later I was on my first travel contract, like driving out of Ohio. And after that, I was like hooked. I was like, this is so cool. Like going to a new place, like meeting new people, learning new things. And eventually like travel contracts took me to Juneau. And I first came here in October of 2019, in October to January, which is literally the worst time to be in Juneau, Alaska. Like it's dark, it's rainy, it's miserable. And people are like, why did you come here? But I loved it. It was like beautiful. And I got an opportunity to come back in May of 2019. And after that, I was like, this is like where I want to stay for a while. So I took a permanent job, and here I still am.
just waiting for the next chapter? How long you plan on staying there for a long time, or?
So I feel like with everything, like right when I started traveling, I told myself I would travel until I found a place that felt like I was happy or like home kind of in a way. And that's how Juneau felt to me. And so my theory is I'm going to stay here until I feel like it's not happy or home, that I want to move on to somewhere else. So I think I will be here like a while. It's a beautiful place, and the people here and the quality of life are like so good compared to anywhere else I've lived and been.
How many places did you go before you got to Juneau as a traveling?
Yeah, so I started, my first contract was in South Carolina. And then from South Carolina, I went to New Mexico, which I will say was my least favorite place, like ever. And then from there, I went to South Boston, Virginia. From Virginia, I went to Alaska. And then after Alaska, I went to Texas, back to Alaska. And somewhere in there, I had a little contract in North Carolina as well.
Okay.
That's a lot of moving around.
Yeah, it was a lot. I got used to literally living with 2 suitcases, because that's when you travel. They pay for like your flights and stuff if you're flying, and so you get 2 bags. So you just had to pack up your life into 2 bags, and I got really used to that, and so then it made it easy.
I can't imagine, because you had to be what, younger 20s when you started this out of college and whatnot, and you just to be able, a lot of people these days can't, fathom leaving their, city, let alone just pick up with 2 suitcases as a younger 20-year-old girl and go, okay, let's do it. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it definitely was like a little scary, but literally the best thing I've ever done for like my professional and like personal growth is just to like go see something different than what I've been used to.
How much of so you said that you, in your different places, you learned different things and you met different people. Would you say that some of those places have changed how you work as a professional by experiencing different cultures, different just experiences, changed how you are as a dietitian?
Yeah, for sure. So like I mentioned, I was in Texas, and in Texas, I actually got the opportunity to work in a specialty clinic, a bariatric clinic. I don't know if you guys are familiar at all with like bariatric surgery or anything.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Do you have a experience, like someone that's gone through bariatric surgery, or do you see patients?
No,
I know
I mean patients,
yeah,
but very patients, and just the way that you like prescribe to them, because sometimes they can't have certain psych medications and whenever I was actually doing floor nursing, I was the dude that had to move the bariatric patients. So
yeah. So that was really interesting to me, because previously, like I would see a few bariatric patients, like that maybe had were a few years out that happened to come into the hospital or something like that, but not like that was my entire life. So it was really interesting because you got to see, one, how people of different sizes like experience life, like up close and personal, and then also the very like psychological and mental aspects of it. I would see patients that would come in that were in a really good headspace, that have tried losing weight for a long time, and they were like, I want to lose weight because I want to be around for my children and I want to be able to move. And, they were maybe so overweight that like they couldn't do physical activity. It was so painful. So weight loss was really difficult. So for those patients, it was really cool to see like this, like literally changed their entire life. Like it's a lot of work. It's super hard, but they did it and it's great. But then you also got to see the opposite side of patients that would come in and maybe had a really emotional or traumatic experience related with like weight and food. Maybe they had a period of depression where they gained a ton of weight, and really like weight loss is not an appropriate thing right now because they can't even like fathom, restricting food. Maybe they had a history of an eating disorder, like all these things, and like surgery is not an appropriate fix for them. Like they need to fix that mental root. So I think it was, as a professional, after that point, when people come in to see me for weight loss, I really try to figure out why they want to lose weight. Is it for like a good, healthy reason, or is it for another reason that maybe needs to be addressed before they can lose weight? I don't know if you ever saw that like with some patients that you experienced, like bariatric patients.
Oh, yeah, mine were kind of in some different settings, so it wasn't quite, the intimate one-on-one where you got to work with them. So,
Yeah.
and a lot of them were like skilled nursing or things of that nature where they were in there kind of long term and had a bunch of different comorbidities, and so
Yeah.
Now you
Yeah.
mentioned, obviously we talked about you were a dietitian right off the bat, and from what I know, it's not cool to call you nutritionist or anything like that. And you mentioned that and Tony mentioned the intimacy of helping somebody out like that. So I guess maybe there's not a lot of people that I feel like I have a very small grasp on what good nutrition is when it comes to good nutrition to somebody, like yourself. But I have a better understanding than most. I know a calorie and a carb and a protein and a fat, but most people don't even understand all those things. So what exactly is it that you do, and what makes it, so special to you that you can help people out like that?
Yeah. So I guess first there's like a range of when I work with patients. I have some patients that I keep it like super, super basic of like, hey, here's what a plate looks like. Can we focus on maybe keeping half of it vegetables? And like, I literally have patients that I have to teach what vegetables are. Like,
I believe
no
that.
joke. Yeah.
I'm still learning
And so
myself.
like that, so that I keep super simple. Because like for those patients, that's what they need. And even just those small, really basic changes can make a world of a difference. And then I have patients where I like get to use my fun, like nerdy science brain that actually have like a really good baseline knowledge and are looking for like more. And that usually tends to be like my personal clients where they're like maybe athletes or training for something like for an Ironman or for like a competition where they need to get to a weight class. And so for that, like I get to use my sciencey brain and figure out like, what's your pre-workout range? How many carbs do we need to have here? What's our post-workout recovery range? How many grams of protein do you need to have here? What's a appropriate deficit we can have you in to, reach the weight class that you want to be in 12 weeks without sacrificing strength. And so for that, that's super fun and exciting and special to me. But at the same time, like I love just the simple stuff too, and getting to work with patients and teaching it in a really basic, easy way for them to understand.
I think a lot of people need at least to start off with basic and easy to understand it. There's a lot. The more and more curious I get, the more and more I learn things, the more and more I realize I don't know a whole lot. That's really what it boils down. The more you know, the more you realize you don't know shit.
Yep.
So, I sent you a message earlier this week. So right along those lines is kind of, if I don't even know how to say it properly, but if someone were to try to put you in a category as far as nutrition goes, because obviously you have people that are vegan, there's the meat eater diet, there's keto, there's all these different things that people say this, that, whatever. And like, I guess overall with food in general, like where do you kind of fit in that spectrum? Because everyone's kind of all over the place with different diets and what is it just because they heard somebody talk about it, or they really believe it for some reason? So what's a good balance?
Yeah.
Where do you fall in that category?
Yeah. I guess if I was to like place myself somewhere, have you heard of intuitive eating at all?
Not formally, no. Sometimes I sleepwalk and I get up and I've done that before. My intuition needs it, so I do it.
Have either of you guys heard of intuitive eating at all?
No.
I've heard of it, just Instagram, whatever. Just bodybuilders who used to be bodybuilders and now they have transitioned from the macro counting to just eating based on what their body, they know their body well enough that they can eat how they, that they can tell what they need at that point. But I haven't like really dived into that.
Yeah. I mean, you basically hit it on the head. And that's kind of probably where I would place myself. So like Cass said, like a lot of intuitive eating is listening to what your body needs, but you also kind of have to have a baseline knowledge of like, this is what maybe balanced nutrition looks like. So that's probably where I would like place myself as an intuitive eating kind of dietitian. But I have so many patients that come to me that are like, hey, I'm a vegan, or hey, I want to do keto, or hey, I believe in XYZ. And I usually can tell patients, for the most part, the diets they like, if they really strongly believe it, it can be part of a healthy diet because everyone's different and their lifestyles are different. So we can make it work for the most part, but I will tell a patient, if they come to me they want to do something crazy, I will tell them risk and benefits of doing it. And a lot of times once they realize oh, maybe there's a lot more risk than benefits, then they can figure out maybe a modified thing. Maybe they want to be vegan, but hate all vegan proteins. Well, maybe we can include some animal-based things to actually have a balanced diet. And then they feel better about that kind of diet, if that makes sense.
So it's basically whatever they want to eat is whatever keeps them healthy at the same time.
Yeah, diabetic patients, so many times they'll come in and they'll be like, oh my God, my doctor told me I can never eat carbohydrates again. I can never have something white. I don't know if you guys have heard that one. I have patients, they'll be like, my doctor told me I can't eat anything white again.
Never.
Are you talking about white starches or just just anything that's a color? White.
White, because back in the day, white was associated with potatoes and bread and rice. So yeah, I know, cringy. Doctors will tell patients don't eat anything white, and you'll still see that sometimes. So I'll come in and be
about yogurt?
Rest assured. Yeah, I know, right? Rest assured, you can eat carbohydrates, and rest assured, you can still eat bread and potatoes. It's about figuring out the portion size and what works for you, whether you're on insulin, whether you're, pre-diabetic, and we just need to work on portion sizes and timing. Yeah. So it really, for the most part, most things can fit in most people's diets. There's obviously some exceptions, a celiac disease patient should not eat any gluten, obviously. That's going to be detrimental. And so for them, teaching them that, but...
We have firsthand experience on that.
Everything you do. Yeah,
it is so bad. There's not one thing that is worth nothing tastes as good as what the symptoms are. So yeah, I agree with that completely.
So is it only intuitive eating, or what about intuitive drinking? I know my body needs bourbon, so I'm just playing.
That's actually another question I get from a lot of patients is are you going to tell me I can't ever drink again? And I'm like, no, you can totally drink. Of course, I talk about moderation and things like that. But yeah, I'm you can still enjoy life. I would never tell someone that really enjoys a glass of bourbon, never again. You can never have bourbon again, because that'd be sacrificing a part of your life you enjoyed. No one wants to do that. We have this one life. Got to make it work.
I think that was one reason why we were super interested with you, because you're super active, right? You lift, you do yoga, you're hiking or running somewhere, and then you're out drinking with your girlfriends, and then you're cooking. Bagels.
Those look like delicious.
Bagels, I know. And it's just such a good example as balance and how you can fit those things in. And I feel like you have put that out there in such a good way that people can see oh, she's really fit, she's really strong, and she's still enjoying these parts of life.
But she's sensible as well.
Right,
no.
Yeah, and it's just it's really
Never
refreshing.
Go the president, sorry to tell you.
Yeah, you're way too sensible for that.
It's just refreshing, I guess, is my.
And I think that's a big piece of it too. Especially these days, it's everything is 100% or nothing, which some things that's good with, but some of these people, they go so overboard, and then years later it's well, everyone's got these diets. What am I supposed to believe about all this? And people don't have the time to investigate. So it's nice for somebody, especially that's young, to people can see and reflect on that. And I don't see too many people basically just saying, hey, do whatever the hell you want to do, just do it responsibly and do it in moderation. As far as, dietitians and fitness people, they're always, either got to be keto, or it's got to be vegetarian, or it's got to be this. It's refreshing to, someone expands their mind a little bit more on those things.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I try to I try to keep it refreshing and sustainable. Like, I have patients that'll come to me, like you said, that, are on a very strict thing of like, oh, I need to be like counting calories because that's what I saw X, Y, and Z do on Instagram. And like, that's what they think they need to do the rest of their life. I'm like, and I usually look at them like, do you want to count calories the rest of your life? Like, do you really want to do that? And they're usually like, no. And I'm like, okay, well then let's figure out what you do want to do the rest of your life. Like, and it's usually something moderation. Like, you want to enjoy a piece of cake on your kid's birthday. Like, you want to enjoy a drink with friends. Like, got to enjoy life.
No, absolutely. And we've talked about this too before, like along with the counting calories, people have come up and been like, hey, like, I want to lose weight. Well, okay. Well, they're like, well, you probably got to stop eating as much as you do. They're like, well, I eat pretty good. And I'm like, all right, well, here's first baby step. Just one day, count the calories on everything you eat. Yeah. Count them. And then they come back to like, oh, it was like 3,800. Yeah, that's a little much if you want to lose weight. If you're not being active. It's like,
unless you're an ultra marathon runner.
Right. So people don't realize, I think there is something to be said about realizing what you're eating, but after that, once you kind of get a
baseline.
Yeah, a baseline, a general, okay, I can't eat 4 giant helpings of mashed potatoes with gravy on top and that be okay. One, okay, maybe we can handle that. But it's that education
no, that's
piece.
absolutely right. Yeah. With a lot of my personal clients that come to me, I do start with like tracking, and it's so funny. The number of times, like in the first week, I usually just tell them, like you said, just track. Like for a week, I just want you to see what you eat. And the number of times like, oh my God, I didn't realize this is what I was eating. Or like, I didn't realize a soup I thought was super healthy actually has like 90 grams of fat in a serving. And I was like, yeah, that's why we're learning. And I was like, next goal, like, let's try and adjust our calorie intake. And usually like that's the progression. It's like learning what you're eating and then following a certain kind of like macro goal for a certain number of time, depending on their goals, and then transitioning to intuitive eating for, long periods of time.
Well, that makes sense. That's sustainability. Because if you're not everyone's a David Goggins or, some of these people that just do insane things. Like if people can't stick with it, then they're not going to.
No.
What did you say is the name of your, I was going to ask you what it means. The business that you run on the sides were your personal clients. Mention the name again and explain what that is.
Yeah, so it's centum cento, which in Latin is 100%. And so when I first was trying to think of names for my business, that one is the one I was brainstorming different things, and that one's the one that clicked because I kind of have this philosophy that my mom kind of put into me of whatever you do it the best you can, give it 100%. And that's kind of how I feel about things. If I'm working with a client, I want to give you the best I can do for you. And when I'm doing my own things in life, I want to give the best I can do. So that one just kind of hit home. And I had a few other ones at the time I was thinking of. And in Ohio, those two were taken. So I was like, well, this is the one that was meant to be for my LLC. So there it was.
I knew there was some backstory to that. There had to be. I didn't know what it was.
Of course, it's a good one.
Okay, yeah. That's cool.
So you just mentioned your personal clients and what do you do, for those clients? Do you build out meal plans or just ideas and teach them the educational piece of it? I mentioned, or you mentioned having, athletes and, different people on, and obviously, like you mentioned, everybody takes a different kind of base to do what they need to do. What do you do with your personal clients and how do you arrange that?
Yeah. So you're right. Everyone's different. The first thing I do typically when I have a client that's interested, I send them a questionnaire. And on that questionnaire, it's a lot of just information of how tall are you? How much do you weigh? What are your goals? Whether that's weight loss, weight gain, training for whatever. Do you have dietary restrictions? Do you drink? Do you smoke? Do you... Literally just a big, long, health questionnaire. So for me, that lets me get kind of a basis of who this patient or client is, what their goals are. So then I can kind of figure out what, as a dietitian, I can do to help them. So Do you want me to like kind of walk you through like an example, like client, I guess?
Yeah, sure. If you want to.
Ooh,
Yeah.
what if a type 1 diabetic came to you and was like, oh, my blood sugars, I can't get to the gym 5 times a week like I want to, even though I have really good control, but I just can't figure out the amount of protein or carbs to sustain me through a workout. So when I do get there, it's only 30 minutes or so. Just a random example.
Yeah, random. And bonus, I'll throw a bonus in there that has celiac disease.
Yeah, so there's a dietary
Yeah,
restriction.
we'll go throw you a good one.
So I guess first, I would say a lot of times my own personal like clients are not physician referred. So I usually will take relatively generally healthy patients, because when I see other patients that have like type 1 diabetes or celiac or something that like requires typically medication management, I like to see them like in conjunction with like a physician. So in case they require like medication changes or like insulin management or something like that. So for my own personal clients, typically relatively healthy, but like patients I see at the hospital where I have a physician that I can like tiger text or email and be like, hey, I think we need to change something. Those are, I guess, probably two separate kind of things, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Just because I don't want to like, you know, work with a client that doesn't have a physician referral and realize like, hey, they really like need some help from a physician that I can't do, and kind of like leave them in an uncomfortable position.
Have you had that where you have to transfer them to, have you had to tell patients or clients, you know, this probably isn't the best for you just because of the control or the direction that you're going to need to end up with?
Yeah, so usually on that questionnaire screening, because I ask for like health conditions or medications, I can kind of weed out of like, hey, I think you really probably should see like a dietitian in a healthcare setting. And that way I don't even like really have to like get their hopes up or start working with them. Like I can go ahead and transition them. And like if I have a patient that I really think needs to see a dietitian and in a healthcare setting, I can usually like give them a referral to, or I can find a dietitian for them. Our academy has a really good like resource of like private practice dietitians that might be in their area. Or also like I can look up hospitals and like actually just see if there's a dietitian. I'm like, hey, you live in this area, here's a dietitian. Usually this is the referral process, like really easy to connect them. That way they have that option right there.
It's always good to cover your bases, especially with someone like that. It makes sense.
Yeah.
How much has just this year been, because I know you travel, typically it seems like you travel a lot.
Yeah.
You know, and seeing your family and whatnot, how, you know, how much different has it been in Alaska or at all than it has been in, you know, the continental?
Yeah. So you're right. I do like to travel and I do like to go places. And so where I live in Juneau, it's the capital. The roads end, like literally all 4 directions. They just end. You can only fly your boat out. So even like in normal circumstances, it does make traveling like a little bit more difficult. And then with like COVID, obviously it got like more restrictive, and like you could still fly out, but like I work in healthcare. So right when like COVID hit, they're like, you can't leave the community till June 30th. And that was in like March. And then from there, they kind of are just like, you shouldn't travel basically like most of the summer. So that kind of sucked. Like just knowing like I can't leave. And it's not like, you know, if I lived maybe in like Indiana, I could drive to see my family, like that would work. But here, you know, you have to fly and go into different states and airports. So couldn't really leave. And then finally, when they kind of said you could, like we have to get COVID tested within 72 hours before we enter our state. Like that's a state mandate. So then like it makes traveling a little bit more difficult. Like, I don't know if in Ohio you guys have any like mandatory like COVID testing for travel.
No, it's not. I think for a while there was, if you were returning from certain states, a lot of the states have that. Okay. If you're returning from a certain level of, you know,
Gotcha.
state, you're supposed to quarantine for 2 days, but you know, obviously don't have, you know, the borders shut down or scanning people like that. I know, like, I feel like New York tried to do that for a little bit. Like they were like pulling, I don't know if they were pulling, I think they maybe had like checkpoints and stuff. People were coming in New York because it was a hot spot there. But it's definitely, I
Yeah.
can imagine
I mean,
it makes it difficult up there. You're already so secluded as it is. At least you got good
yeah.
views,
And
right?
so, yeah, right? Yeah. So, I mean, traveling's hard because you have to like figure out where you can get COVID tested. Because literally, when you come back into the airport, you have this form you have to fill out like on your phone or online before you even fly in. And then when you get there, there's like 2 lines of like if you're a resident or if you've already had your test result, you can go through this one. If not, you have to go through this one and get tested. So it's like you're literally in these lines like waiting, and then finally when you get cleared, like then you can actually like go get your bags. Like it's a whole hassle because not all states even have like where you can just go get a COVID test. So like I can't go to those states because if I come back, then I have to get tested, and then I can't return to work till I get a test. So it's like taking a vacation plus then taking like 7 days to sit in my apartment. Like, no thanks. I guess I'd rather just like work. So
where did you
yeah,
just
it's
come from? Didn't you just take a quick vacation?
yeah.
California
So I
or
went to
something?
San Diego. Yeah, I went to San Diego. We flew in there, and then we went to Joshua Tree National Park, and then came back to San Diego. And luckily in California, you can go get a COVID test, so I could actually like get my test, get my results, and come back to Alaska without having to miss work, which is good.
So you get tested before you get on the flight to come back home, and then those results are valid for you to return to work. They don't make you get another one before returning to work.
So the way it works right now is like you have to get a test within 72 hours before you land in Alaska. That's like your first test, and it has to be negative. Then once you land in Alaska, you have to have like strict social distancing and masking. At our work, we have universal masking, so like I literally just don't take off my mask all day. And so you have that, and then you have to get a second test within like 7 to 14 days of returning, and then after 14 days or your negative test, then you're clear, I guess you would say. So yeah, it's a little interesting, and they can do a lot of rules here because we are so secluded. Like
I was gonna say
they
that
can
sounds
actually
so
enforce
different.
them. Yeah.
Okay.
I think you said interesting. I feel like you have an opinion on some of that stuff. Have they been
I mean,
have they been like that the whole year, or is it just? I mean, I know they said that right at the beginning they said you couldn't leave. Would they just try to initially shut down? Do they shut down like a lot of businesses and stuff up there? Or is it just been trying to keep people out and keep people that are coming in? They're known to be healthy.
Yeah. So it's been kind of weird the whole like time here. I feel like everything that's happened in Alaska has been very delayed from what happens in the lower 48. Like when you guys had like your big spike, like we had nothing. And then it was like delayed effect. Okay, now we have this happening. Like second spike, nothing. Delayed effect, like it's happening. So the biggest thing here is like we're super reliant on the tourism industry. Like population here in Juneau is like 30,000 like year round, and like the summer that can like triple. Like cruise ships come in, like huge things. Well, they shut that down, so a lot of businesses naturally just unfortunately had to close because there was no economy for them. So that happened. They really restricted like people that weren't residents coming into our state, which they could do. Like if you just wanted to travel for fun, basically you really couldn't. They made it really hard. And they started to ease that recently. Yeah, it's been different. Like it was difficult to travel for a while.
Right. And they're going to start opening up right as it starts getting dark all the time there, basically.
Yeah.
Sons of bitches.
Did you have to do a lot of
but-
virtual patients? Like at your regular job, did you have to switch to virtual for a while?
Yeah, so at my hospital, I work both inpatient and outpatient. All the dietitians do. So for inpatient, of course, like we still went into work. We saw our patients that were in the hospital. But then for our outpatients, from like probably March to June-ish, I would say, we switched to all telehealth. Basically all outpatient stuff that like, didn't absolutely need to be in person was like mandated to go to telehealth. And so that was kind of a huge shift, like not being able to actually like see my patients in person. And now we have a blend. Like now we have patients that still like don't feel comfortable like coming into the hospital or don't feel comfortable like leaving their house or just like really like telehealth. And so I still do that. And then I have patients that want to come into the hospital. So it's a blend now, which I kind of like.
Tony, what are you guys doing? Are you blended, or are you just all face to face?
No, and I mean, some of them are face to face and some of them are tele. So at the one place I work, a lot of them are tele. The other place, just because of the nature of what I do, they're face to face. So,
well, I think some things would be fine for tele, over the phone or over Skype or whatever it may be like this, but it's there is something lost. I mean, it's even as nice as it is doing something like this, there is just something lost without being able to sit there like in front of somebody. And that was kind of like our whole goal with this, even more so just trying to have conversations with people, because especially this year, it feels like you don't get to see anybody, you don't really get to talk to anybody. All you can see is people on social media just freaking out at each other. So like, it's just nice to be able to sit down with somebody.
Well, the other element to that too is even on the face-to-faces, everyone has a mask on, and so you lose so much because you can't read their face, you can't see their emotions, and
oh my God,
especially with the intimacy that you talked about, talking to patients and their emotions that are tied to what their goals are, especially for patients that want to, and if people aren't going to be just super open, you have to rely on those extra senses to be able to pick up on that, to see, is there a hesitation here or a resistance, or are they giving me the full truth? And I feel like you mentioned with it, why are you chasing this goal, or why are we trying to do this? And then it's so easy to not be completely open on a Skype or on the telephone. I feel like a lot would be lost there. I mean, have you noticed a change in your patients, like emotionally, mentally, just from March until now?
Oh my God, yes. Yeah, right when it hit, like a lot of my long-term patients that I've been seeing for a while that had to go to telehealth, it was really like sad. I mean, like here they would tell us like only go to the grocery store every 2 weeks, and for some of my patients, like they're like, well, I don't know how I can like plan to do all these things because like I don't know how to grocery shop for 2 weeks. And then like, so that was a difficult thing, like if they really had these strong goals, like figuring out how to work that in. Or like patients that like literally like depression just hit them hard, like hard, and they're like, I don't want to go exercise, like I'm just sad, like I just want to sit in my house. And like I wish I could be there like right next to them talking to them, but it's over Zoom, and like trying to like kind of console or work with someone. It's like, this is not the easiest or the best way to work with patients. So I saw a lot of patients that were like really depressed or lost like good healthy outlets. Like I had patients that really loved to go to the gym to walk on the treadmill. Like that's something they really enjoyed, and couldn't go. Gyms were closed, and it was still snowy and icy here. So like not safe for some of my patients to be outside walking. And so like, then they just lost a healthy outlet. Then they also can't go to the store to get like the fruits and vegetables they want. Like all these things, it just felt like their world was like crashing down, and it was really like shitty to see and like not know exactly how to help. Like you can try, but it was a weird time, and I was learning the same things as them.
Right.
Well, that's even somebody like myself. I feel okay secluded. Like we joked about what it was like 2 months in, we're sitting there on the couch watching the news or something like that, and they were talking about how single people are struggling because they're locked in their house. They can't go out with their friends. And I was like, we both kind of looked at each other. We're like, well, if you weren't here, like I like you being here, but if you weren't, like I'd be okay. And maybe that's why we get along so well, because we just hole up in our house forever. But even then, like even if you're okay being alone, after a while, I think there's something to the aspect of you're not choosing to be alone. You're forced to be alone. Yeah. So like, how do you do that? And, being in a different state from most of your family, and, what's your remedy to that?
Yeah. So I will say
baking's a big piece of it.
She bakes. She's always baking. She puts on boots and she goes running, and I don't understand it, and it's amazing.
Happy for the bears.
I do carry bear spray. A lot of therapeutic things. Like, picked up baking during quarantine and like running. That was a big thing because gyms were closed. So I was like, it's snowy and crappy out, but like, let's go. But honestly, like, yeah, my family's not here, and we call our little like group of friends here our friend family. A lot of people that aren't like Native Alaskan are transplants. Like a lot of us here are. So most people, like all my friend group, none of their families here, and that's a way for a lot of people. So you really start to appreciate your friendships even more, I think, than really anywhere else I've lived, because they're not just your friends, they're your family. They're your people like, hey, my parents aren't here to ask, like, what did they do for retirement? And I need to make this decision right now. Let me call my friend that went through the same paperwork and get their advice. Or my car broke down. I can't call my brother to come help me. Call my friend. So, yeah, they really, and they get it because they don't have their friends or they don't have their family here either. So those people really have become literally like my friend family and supported me through it, and I support them through it. Like, you get really close with people here.
I think it's important. I mean, especially, it's weird. I don't know. Maybe just because I was so secluded, for the most part. If I wanted to be secluded from people because I just didn't like them for the most part. But that's how I used to be. But I don't know. And maybe it's one of those things where the more and more, you interact with people and find out that they're just people just like you. It's like, oh, like this is kind of cool. Like most people aren't the ridiculous image that you put on them from some bad experience you had with somebody else in your past. Most people are just people looking for other people.
Yeah. Genuine. That's my biggest thing. People here, I appreciate, like, they're very genuine, and like all of my friend connections I've made in other places, the strongest ones are people that are genuine. They are who they are.
When you traveled there, was there a group of you of dietitians, or was it just you? And then once you got there, you found your little friend family, or did some of you transfer together, or how did that work?
Yeah. So when I traveled, I was always by myself going to a place. Like completely by myself, which was interesting. The one place that I was kind of lucky was in Texas, in El Paso. Our company, before I came, they're actually like, hey, there's 2 other dietitians that they just placed in different hospitals there. And they were like, I think it'd be cool for you guys to like meet up. Like, we've never had dietitians at different facilities in the same place that could really meet up. And they're like, it'd be a cool thing for like their marketing stuff or whatever. So we actually all met up. And from that, I like actually got to meet them and then realized like they knew people that they had like trained from, like that were transferring contracts, and then same with me. So then from there, we actually kind of got like a little like travel dietitian kind of networky family, which was pretty cool.
Bunch of food.
And
nerds.
So like, yeah. So that's pretty cool because like when I actually came back up to Alaska, a lot of times we've had to use travelers. So then I could be like, hey, is my friend open for a travel contract? And like I had the opportunity for one of my really good friends to like come work with me when I was a traveler here. And like another girl I'd never met in person but knew because of another connection also got to come up here and work like to cover a gap. So always was by myself, but met a lot of people through like transitions and just like other people that knew people, which was cool.
What gaps are you filling? So I understand-ish traveling nurses, especially now with COVID, but what kind of gaps or positions do you take as a traveling dietitian?
Yeah, so typically travel dietitians are like staffing gaps of like some of the places I've been, like they literally can just not find a person that like wants to work there. Like New Mexico, great example. I told you guys I didn't like it. Like it was literally like the armpit of New Mexico. It was not fun. And they literally just could not find someone that permanently wanted to work there. They've had rotating travelers for, I think it was like almost 2 years, because most of the travelers after like 3 months were like, yeah, screw this place. I don't want to be here. So
how long did you last?
My contract was for 9 weeks, and at like week 7, I was like, I need my plane ticket home. I'm leaving in 9 weeks. Like, I'm ready.
Sounds rough.
I drove 4 hours to El Paso for a weekend because I was like, I don't want to be here. There's nothing to do. It's flat desert surrounded by oil fields. Like,
You know what's out there, Tony?
Oh, here we go.
Stop. No.
Aliens, obviously.
How long did he make?
50 minutes. Pretty good, Fred.
50 minutes.
It's a running thing. For some reason now I just do it just to irritate him. I have to bring up aliens every single episode, every podcast I do. So,
oh my gosh. Have you been to Roswell, New Mexico?
No,
If you like aliens?
No,
She's feeding into this, Tony. She's feeding into this.
It's mostly just to annoy those two. No, we've talked about, we want to go out west. That's one place that I haven't been. I've been up and down the eastern seaboard, but I've never been out west, and it looks absolutely gorgeous. Like have you ever been Utah? Utah, we were talking about we just want to go to Utah and pitch a tent out there somewhere and just
retire.
Yeah, I'm going in February actually to Utah. We're taking a road trip, so I'm super excited for that.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
You just keep doing you, girlfriend, and I'll just live vicariously through you. It's fine.
Well, I think it was
good.
it was probably a year and a half ago where you were like, "She's my spirit animal."
You said that first, and I was like, "Oh my god, it's so true." I feel like you were probably eating peanut butter out of a jar or something. I'm not sure. And I was like, "Yes."
I can't keep peanut butter in my house because it's dangerous. Like, I literally will be finding myself just eating spoonfuls of it. I'm like, no, what am I doing? I got this jar on Tuesday and it's gone. Like, I can't keep it at my house.
There are times where I'm like, do not buy peanut butter. And he's like,
yeah, and then
how long is that going to last?
As I'm at the store, she's like, Give me some peanut butter. You told me not to. Don't let me facilitate this.
But on a more serious note, I don't even know. It was maybe a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. I don't know. We were talking. Kyrie is like, I'm not going to college. I'm staying home forever. I'm like, okay, well, that's not going to last. But, you're 7 and I get it. And I don't even remember how it was brought up, but I was like, you could be a Becky. I don't want you to move away, but I want you to move away. I want you to be able to just pack up and go and know that you have our support and you can always come home, but go and do the things. I love my life, but dude, I don't want you married at 21. I don't want you having a baby at 22. I want you to just go and do and get married, not get married. I don't care. Have babies, don't have babies, but just go experience. Just know that the option is there if you want it. And it's just, I don't know. You're just a really good example. You probably don't realize that, but I don't know if I've ever told you that, but it's just a really, really cool thing to be able to say, Kai, this is possible. I love my life, but this is also a really cool option. And we support you in this. Go somewhere cool and we'll come visit, right?
Yeah, stay the hell out of my basement.
Yeah,
you're not gonna be 30 years old in my basement.
Yeah, so it's just
go do something cool.
I just love it, and it's just nice that females can do that too, right? There's all these things that we can do, and I don't want her to think that Wayne County, Ohio is where it's at, right? Go somewhere else.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and then you can always come back.
Right, yeah.
You can go see the world, and wherever you want to come back to, home is always there.
Home is
which
where
is
you make
nice.
it.
And I feel like that's you. I feel like you have said before, she's got this adventure wandering soul, and I feel like that's Tony too, right?
And I haven't lived a lot of places, but I immediately moved away. When I was done with high school, I was like, I gotta go, and so I went to South Carolina. I went to Charleston, South Carolina, and
nice.
Yeah, I think it's great when people, they don't have to move or live permanently, but at least travel. I think it gives you just a better perspective on life in general, and I think people that travel typically are more tolerable of other people. A lot of the people I've met that have been to different countries, or they're not so quick to judge, or that's from my experience. I don't know if that's been some of your experience as you travel.
I would agree.
Because of all the, do you think it's because of all the experiences and just meeting different people?
Yeah, because you're different cultures and customs and practices, and
you realize you're not the only one out there.
Yeah.
These people grew up in their hometown, they think everything revolves around. No, there's a lot of other stuff out there, and there's a lot of stuff out there that you might not agree with or align with, or even understand what it is. I've never lived I mean, I lived in Akron for a while. That was kind of like a different place.
It's a different culture.
Yeah, but you know, I've spent like we've talked about. I've spent a lot of time like in New York and stuff, and it's vastly different wherever you go. So it's you realizing that you know not everyone's the same, and I can only imagine the. I've never been to Alaska. I've talked to a couple people that have been there, and they just say there's just something different about it. It sounds like you obviously agree since you decided to stay there for long periods of time.
Yeah.
How many?
I think you guys would like Alaska.
I think it'd be awesome.
We have a friend, Caleb, just said, hey, anytime you want to go to Alaska, we have basically an empty house. His aunt lives there, big house. It's empty, but, you know, just her. And he said, yes, yes, let's do that. I think they're going in the spring. I think that's their plan. Him and his wife to go in the spring.
I want to say they live a little like, not north, but not like, I can't remember exactly where he said they were at. But I think the weather gets pretty brutal in the winter.
Oh.
In the winter.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I mean, Alaska's a pretty big place.
Yeah.
How much, speaking of that, you talked about it was going to be, where you're at, what's the shortest daylight frame that you get? Because I know that there's parts of Alaska during the winter where it's like, dark for like 4 days in a row. But
yeah, let me tell you what a sunrise and sunset is today.
This might make you feel better about the view.
Yeah, I asked her, Tony, earlier, like, well, what's the temperature? So maybe I'll be less jealous. And she's like, it's 28. And I was like, oh, I feel better about being in Ohio.
Sunrise is 7:49 and sunset is 3:36 today.
Oof. Yeah, it's a lot early.
Wait, what time is it right now where you're at?
Yeah,
What's
it is noon.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
3 hours.
Yeah, the dark really messes with you. Like, I fell asleep at 7 the other night, and I probably I wanted to go to bed at like 5. Like, it's weird, especially if you work like a longer shift, or you get to work when it's dark, and when you leave work it's dark. Like, you may not have seen daylight all day, and you're like, I want to go to bed now, but if I go to bed now, I'm gonna wake up at like 4 a.m. Like,
and it'll still be dark.
It really messes with you.
Yeah. I can say, because I've worked jobs where I worked outside, but there's still like in the morning you leave home and it's dark, and you pull in your driveway and it's dark, and it's like, this is brutal. I can only imagine with those times. I know how you get in the summertime, you get some time that's like just a few hours of night too. Because I remember watching Dave Attell. You ever watch Dave Attell? Mm-hmm. Well, he's a comedian, but he used to do that. He would travel around to different places in the United States, and it was basically, the show was from like 11 at night till like 7 in the morning. He would shoot it. So he'd shoot like the night scene, and he went up to Alaska at some point where it was light the whole time. So he was like, they were all out drinking at like 3, 4 in the morning, and it's daylight out. Yeah. And they're like hammered by 7 o'clock, and the sun's still up. And he's like, well, I don't know. Let's just keep on going, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I went up to Anchorage for midnight sun. So yeah, at midnight, literally the sun is still out, and that was so weird. Like, I walked out of a bar at like, I don't know, probably like 11:30, and we wanted to walk and like look at the sun at midnight, and it was weird. I was like, this feels like it's like 5 o'clock, and I've been drinking for like a while, and it's still daylight. Like, real weird. And when we went home, when the bars closed, like, it was like the sun was down, but it's still like twilighty. Like, it's still light out. Like, real weird. But really cool.
When was that?
That was June 21st, 22nd. Okay. Yeah. So at that point, like, another weird thing with like the COVID stuff is, for a while you could travel within the state fine. So like, they kept everyone else out, but you could travel within Alaska. So that was like our little vacation. Also, a lot of people would be like, all right, well, I'm sick of Juneau, so I'm going to go to Anchorage, or I'm going to go to the interior and like be in a cabin for 3 weeks, like something like that. So that was one little blessing in disguise, is you could at least like travel within the state relatively easy.
I think there was a couple provinces in Canada that were doing that, and they haven't seen any COVID cases at all. They basically just like shut their, I think it was like 3 or 4 provinces in Canada, like they completely shut their borders, but they were allowed to travel in between, and they still have like, they still don't have a case of COVID, but they also had to shut their borders, which is a little
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Yeah. Some of the really small communities here that, again, like have no roads, like they're only accessible by plane or boat, did that, where you could not come in and they've had no cases. Like you could literally only come in if you were like transporting something like vital to the community. And for a while, like I know we had someone like come in to Juneau and they're like, well, you can't come back to our community right now. Like we're keeping everything out because we have no cases. So, I mean, difficult, but like they had to protect themselves because they also had like basically no healthcare resources. Like if someone were to be super sick, you have to wait for, a flight to get you and transport you, weather permitting, to the nearest hospital. So
yeah. I've seen some of those documentaries where it's parts of Alaska, like during the winters, where they go 3 months without any contact whatsoever, and it's like it's insane to think about that. There's
I got offered jobs in those places in the bush, and they were
really?
like, well,
brutal.
Yeah, oh yeah,
NP jobs.
Yeah. I mean, I was like in extensive talks with someone over that, and I'm like, oh, that's a pretty sweet salary. And I'm like, there's got to be a reason for it. And I'm like, oh, okay. You have to fly all your groceries in. Like milk was like $9 a gallon, I think. And then they were like, yeah, don't plan on seeing anybody but
you just got to tame a polar bear.
I
feel like you could do it if anybody. You just have a walk around the polar bear on a chain, milking the polar bear for its milk.
Just riding it with a stake in front of it.
Wait, so is it like, was it a clinic or?
Yeah. It was like several that you went to.
So you just kind of.
Yeah, yep. Huh. But I didn't end up taking it.
No.
So, what about the mosquitoes up there? Tell me
about the mosquitoes.
Any mosquitoes, or is it?
Yeah, in Juneau, there's bugs, and it's not as bad as like up north though. Like the bugs there are, nasty. They're definitely worse than Ohio, I will say.
Really?
Oh, that helps the jealousy also.
That kind of surprises me because you usually figure with the colder climate, you don't have quite as many insects being active. They gargantuan up there, like got some dinosaur insects or something.
No, I just feel like there's like a lot of bugs. And in the summer here and in like up north, it actually gets warm, like 70s and 80s here. And like up north, it'll be in the 80s sometimes too. Like we have some big extreme shifts.
Right. I've seen some of the summer pictures from up there. They're gorgeous. I feel like it doesn't last that long though. Is that is just your in between seasons longer or just?
Yeah. So like tourist season here is like May to October, and May can be like hit or miss. Like this summer, May was actually like beautiful, like awesome. And then June and July were terrible. Like it rained almost every day. Like I think we literally had, I think it was June to like part of July, there was 30 days straight of like precipitation. Because also June is a temperate rainforest. People like think Alaska's all snow, but we're a temperate rainforest. We get insane amounts of rain, obviously. And then August was like meh. And like September and October were like beautiful. And usually those are like the rainy, crappy months. So yeah, it kind of depends on like the year, but we do have like some really nice months, and then we have some really crappy rainy months. So
someone with seasonal depression would just be like,
I don't roller coaster.
Yeah, I don't know how to feel right now. Yeah,
it's like global warming.
Yeah, I have a dietary question. I'd like to get your thoughts or kind of theory on. What do you think about like food allergies in general? I'm not young, but I don't consider myself super old, and I don't remember any kids in high school ever having like a peanut allergy, and it is just super widespread. And is that like talk to me about that?
Yeah. So I don't know why there is like a huge expanse of food allergies. Like I'm sure there's tons of really good research that I'd want to like read into it. I'm sure there's lots of theories like about it. One little interesting thing I will say that I've noticed is like obviously there's anaphylactic shock. People that like if you eat peanuts, like you could die.
You're done,
and I will say like Yeah, I see also sometimes allergies that are listed that are not real allergies. And I feel like sometimes, I don't know if you see that, I see a lot of intolerances
Yeah.
getting labeled as allergies, which is sometimes really frustrating. I'm like, this is not an allergy. We need to like keep these very separate. So I don't know if like sometimes maybe that's like contributing to the rise is like people are just like blending things. Um, yeah, I don't know why there is. And I mean, I do see a true increase in like real true allergies too. Um,
Have you
yeah,
noticed
I
a
don't know why.
shift in the environments that you've been in? Like different areas have had higher allergies to different like specific things? Because I feel like we've discussed that
I have
before.
a really good follow-up question to this.
Yeah.
But
So
go
have
ahead.
you noticed that, or is that not maybe not something you ever really paid attention to because based on location and things like that?
Yeah, I don't know if I've noticed it in allergies per se, but like intolerances, definitely I've noticed. Like, for example, like dairy, like lactose. A lot of like indigenous or like minorities tend to be more lactose intolerant. So if you're in a place where there's a higher percentage of like a minority, you're probably going to see more lactose intolerance. So being like aware of that and talking about like non-dairy options or things like that. That's probably like the best example I have of seeing like a shift based on where I am.
That totally. I think we talked about this before,
Yeah,
Tony.
I figured that's where
Yeah,
you're
it
gonna
was. Well, this was actually something completely separate. So two things. We had kind of talked about that before, where I heard somebody talking. It was just a hypothesis, or their theory on something. But they had talked about how it's a majority of the people around the world, from what I remember, and I'll butcher it, but majority of people around the world have some kind of lactose intolerance.
Mm-hmm.
And from what I gathered, they're basically equated that to, so a lot of people, so I'm somewhere, some kind of European descent, Scottish, Irish, German, and I love dairy products. But
Mm-hmm.
they were talked about how a lot of the people, they think their theory was that people that lived in warmer climates, they tend to be more lactose intolerant because of their evolutionary chain where they didn't have the capabilities of keeping dairy products cold. So they never ate
Mm-hmm.
them. So they never really got
Mm-hmm.
exposed to them. I guess what do you think about that theory? And then I have something else to follow up on that too.
Yeah. One, I like agree with it. I also love dairy products. Like I eat a disgusting amount of yogurt. Like,
You
oh my
make
God, I
your
love
own
it.
yogurt, to
Yeah, to
clarify.
clarify,
You
yeah.
make your
Thank you.
own.
Yeah.
Anyways, continue.
Yeah, I make my own yogurt. I made cheese this weekend. Like I really love dairy products. But no, I really believe that based on like your genetics and your ancestral history, like nutrition can really play a factor. Like a really good example. So you sent me the thing about the physician that wrote the book Carnivore.
Yeah, that Paul Saladino.
Yeah, so I like looked him up or whatever, and I always immediately go to like their research, like what they put. And so he like mentioned like the Inuit people in the northern Alaska eating all meat and having very low incidences of like heart rate or of like cardiovascular disease.
Right.
So like that's a really good example. So those people that have lived there for generations have no access really to like plants. They eat essentially an all meat, basically all fat diet. And that's what their bodies have evolved for generations to do, right? So that's what they can do. But if basically what like research and science says, if I was to feed you that diet of literally all like saturated fats and fat, you probably would have an increased rate of like cardiovascular issues. Your cholesterol probably would go up theoretically, but those people are meant to be that way. Another really good example, like people think really high carbohydrate foods are gonna like give you diabetes, right? That's what we always think here in America. Like carbs are bad. But if we look at like Japan, for example, like rice and really high carbohydrate foods are part of their like cuisine for generations. They actually have like some of the lowest rates of diabetes because that's what theoretically their generations and their bodies have evolved to do. So it would be like silly for me to tell someone like maybe that is Japanese and has that long ancestral history to be like, no, screw your culture, eat what I tell you to eat, probably wouldn't work. Same thing if I told someone that's like an Inuit person and has been that way for years to be like, hey, screw your culture, eat this, probably won't work. So same thing, like, I don't know, there's research that's coming out about it and still kind of progressing, but there's something to be said about eating kind of maybe as your generations or as your history and genetics have evolved to make your body digest food and the things that are correct for it, if that makes sense.
Right. No, absolutely. Sensible, well-rounded answer.
So then the rest of us who are just, you know, like mixed breeds, we just kind of have to figure it out. Like, we just have to go with what, because I don't know where we're from, so we just kind of have to figure it out, what works and what doesn't, I guess.
Yeah, well, you mentioned, that Paul guy that I sent you, and I was listening to it. It was a podcast that it was like 3 hours long, and he had kind of really dove into a lot of that. And he had hit, the idea was that ancestrally, like, we have all kind of, evolved eating meat. So it was one of those things where if you have a meat-based diet, and he actually gets in not just, the muscle of the animal, like all of, what they call it, nose to tail or whatever. And the benefits of that, but at the same time, the benefits of plants too, because if you, and this kind of goes back to the peanut thing, where he talked about, in times where they couldn't find animals to eat, that they would have to survive on plants and berries and all these different things, and the gathering aspect of that, and that actually helped them to continue to develop not immunities but resistances to some of these things that typically we couldn't eat. Because he made the really good point of almost every animal is edible and almost every plant is not edible, and I was like, wow, I never really thought about that before. So that was really interesting to see. It was funny because I just started listening to that a week and a half ago before this. So I was like, oh, this is like perfect timing, like, just to get your opinion on that. And it's, to say that as people have their history, their ancestral history, what they eat, it makes sense. I guess how do you go about finding that sweet spot for people that just don't know?
Yeah, I mean, so like how Cass said, people that, we don't know what we are, and we're a mix of things. I mean, that's, I guess, kind of where that like intuitive eating and just general, like, starting out figuring what your body responds to. Like, you come in and I'm going to talk to you about like maybe eating like a my plate kind of style, like doing half your plate vegetables, regardless of like what your like genetics are. Like, vegetables probably are a good idea. They're going to give you micronutrients, fiber, which is going to help with our, GI system, our gut. And then like, obviously we all need some protein. So a quarter of that plate being protein. So whether you want to be vegan, we could talk about a plant-based option. If you really like meat, sure, let's do meat there. And then like another section of our plate being carbohydrates. So again, like whatever you like, if you really like rice, we can fit that there, something like that. And that's kind of a general start. And then we can figure, maybe your body needs some more protein. Maybe we can adjust that portion size. Maybe you need more fiber. You're not having regular bowel movements. Maybe we need to add more whole grains. Maybe that's shifting a little bit more vegetables, kind of starting with a base. And then the longer you work on your nutrition, figuring out what you need to do to shift to meet your goals. And it takes time and listening to your body and figuring out like what your body's telling you.
And that's hard. I mean, that's really
hard.
It takes a lot of work.
As someone who has to examine basically everything that goes into my mouth, and I joke all the time that I'm like a science experiment, I still have a hard time knowing exactly what I need, and I still fuck it up. And and I would say that I'm pretty good at it because I have been forced to, but it's still sometimes you get it wrong. So just how do you go from like the my plate of half of the vegetables, and then a section of protein and carbs, to how do you teach them how to listen to their body and how to know, okay, I need protein, or I need carbs, or I need fat? I mean, I know that has to be a very lengthy discussion over a large amount of time, but how do you teach people to do that? Because that's got to be a huge missing link.
Yeah. So, I mean, you're probably a really great example. Like, you check your blood sugar, like, obviously. So, you're like people that are diabetic, obviously, a really good example of like, what are your blood sugars telling you? And that's like a very like objective way to like kind of measure your responses to different things. So, I think for patients that have an objective measure, that can be a lot not easier, but can help like interpreting things. So you can start to maybe learn your body's responses like, hey, my blood sugar was really low when I ate this way. Let's try shifting this way and see how my blood sugars respond. For patients that don't have that objective measure, sometimes I talk about like, for example, like in weight loss, I talk about like a hunger satiety scale, like cueing yourself like before I eat, am I like a one, like where I'm so hungry I absolutely need to eat this second or I'm gonna like pass out, to like a 10, like Thanksgiving stuffed, and starting to key into that. So figuring out like, hey, I'm eating when I'm at like a 3, and am I stopping when I'm at like a 6, or am I consistently going to that 10? Maybe we can start to learn of like getting yourself to, instead of eating to a 10, shift to a 6 or a 7. And maybe with that, you start to figure out when I add more vegetables to my plate, I'm actually comfortable in getting to that 6 or 7. Maybe it's when I add a little bit more protein, I'm figuring out that satiety scale. Some people, for like athletes, maybe it's figuring out like, I need to eat more carbohydrates, which tends to be the case. I need to eat more carbohydrates and my run times are better. I need to eat more carbohydrates in this window. I realize my weight lifting performance is better. So kind of those measures, which are just different for everyone depending on like their goals and things like that. And it takes time, like you said.
So two things. One, you keep scooting off to the side. And
Oh, do I?
Yeah, we're
Gosh,
starting to
I'm
lose
so...
you. Oh, there you go.
just get moving her out, Nancy.
Yeah, that's fine. So the second one though is you talked about the scale. Like I remember, like every single time I go into a doctor's office, like I see what's your pain level on a 0 to 10? I'm like, well, in my mind, I think, well, if someone's like sawing my arm off with like a dull pocket knife, that's probably going to be a 10. So how much do you have to kind of filter that bullshit meter a little bit that people give you? Or are most of your clients coming to you pretty well, focused on what they want to do and take it pretty seriously? Do you get some of those people who are like, no, you don't have to eat right now?
Yeah, I feel like for the most part, patients that are coming to me, I mean, it's a choice to come. Like, it's not like you're hospitalized. Like, if you're seeing me as an outpatient, you made that active choice to drive or get on the Zoom call or whatever. So, like on that, health continuum model, you're in the action phase. You made that decision. So, for the most part, I feel like patients at that point are fairly honest, so it's not an issue. I do have patients that will come to me maybe because like their partner or someone told them like, you have to go, and they show up and they're not happy to be there. And so that's a different discussion. Usually I tell them like, if I can really tell they absolutely don't want to be there and are like not really engaging, like, I have your referral. Like, it's okay if you're not ready to make a change at any point. Like, you want to come back and make a change or like talk about things in a different way. Like, I'm always happy to reschedule you. Like, and so that's a little bit more of a difficult conversation to have. But I mean, no one's going to make a change if they're not ready to be there.
We've talked about that before. I mean, on many different things. If the person's not willing to do it, they're not going to do it.
Yeah.
They got to be ready.
Yeah, and it's okay. They can always come back. That's what I tell them. Like, it's okay if you're not ready. You can come back at a different time.
So where do you think you found like this passion? How did you become a dietitian plus all these what do all the letters mean? Because I see it, I'm like, she's got all these letters. Like, what?
Yeah. So RD stands for Registered Dietitian. So that's, you get your RD credentials from when you take like your big like national board exam, just like how RNs or like a lot of other medical professionals get those letters. My LD is licensed dietitian. So for most states, you also have to get that credential. There is still a few states that don't have licensing boards, which make me cringe inside, because then it's really unregulated, like nutrition practices, and you see some real sketch things in those places. So those are those two. My MFN is my Master's in Food and Nutrition, and my CNSC is another credential I got, a Certified Nutrition Support Clinician. So another little area that not everyone knows dietitians do is nutrition support. So whether that's like tube feedings or like TPN, like nutrition through the vein. So I'm also certified in that. So that was another like big exam I took, which is another fun little like thing that I obviously only do in the hospital with like ill patients, which is kind of cool. So that's all my letters. But then how I got interested in becoming a dietitian. So when I was like, I don't know, 15, 16, I was pretty sick. Like I've always been very active, right? Like even from being a child, like running, sports, everything like that. And like I just started to get really tired, and like it got to the point like I would sit down to do my makeup, like I couldn't even stand. I would like walk up the stairs to like science class and literally like be exhausted, like put my head on the table, like could barely make it through class. And my parents eventually like, hey, this is not normal. I'm like, being the stubborn like child, I was like, I don't want to go to the doctor, I'm fine. Obviously not fine. Right. Finally got me to go, and says something about like rural healthcare. They're like, oh, you're tired, you have vertigo. So they gave me a medication, which the side effect was sleepiness, which I'm already exhausted.
Nap time.
Yeah, so that didn't work well. So it got worse. Like couldn't stand in the shower. Like I would lay down in the shower.
I've done that before.
And Tony, you're probably like, oh, I know what this girl's anemic,
yeah,
right?
Well,
like,
I was like, what's your H&H and where you tested for mono?
Yes,
so.
Right? Yeah. So finally I go back and they do blood work. My hemoglobin was 5.2. And they're like, oh, you should probably come in and get retested. Let's make sure that wasn't an error. And they retested, it was still 5.2. They're like, oh yeah, you're really anemic. Obviously now it's like a health professional, like, yeah, I'm like a 15, 16-year-old girl. Why did you not test that right away? But whatever.
Rural healthcare.
So, yeah. So eventually, like, obviously, like, my H&H got better, and I took iron supplements, and, like, that actually got me intrigued of, like, is there iron in this food? What's going to help me absorb iron better? So that kind of, like, got me interested in it, and then I realized, like, oh, this is really cool. Like, I didn't realize, like, what's in different foods, and a weird thing, like I realized again after the fact, looking back, like I craved ice like no other, which is like a symptom, or like you'll see that in patients that are super anemic. Like I wouldn't want to eat food. I'd be like, this looks disgusting, I'm going to throw up, but like I will eat the ice out of this freezer. I loved our ice. It was so great.
That should be a good saying. That's what you're saying. I'll eat the ice out of that freezer.
That's what she said.
It was weird, yeah. I would eat ice all day. And then once my iron was normal, like to this day, I do not want to eat ice. Like, I'm like, ew, why would I do that? But I loved ice then. So yeah, that just got me interested. And from then on, like, nutrition's pretty cool and how it can affect your body.
Do you have any more like pearls of wisdom like that with the ice chips that you see on a regular basis? Like, someone's craving this, or someone, does this, and you're like, oh, I know what that is.
Yeah, the ice one is a big one. Like I will, to this day, like if I have like, especially like a young female patient come to me, like that hasn't had any like iron labs or complaining of like weight loss, fatigue, I will ask that one, and it's interesting. You still will get that, like I'll get that response. In terms of other cravings, I'm trying to think of other ones that I've seen or like key me into things. Not ones I've seen frequently, but another like kind of small part that we do as dietitians, we do nutrition focused physical exams on our hospitalized patients. And part of that is like, obviously it's a physical exam, and usually we're checking for like losses in muscle and losses in fat. But we do like a small part with like micronutrient deficiencies, and like your oral cavity, your tongue can actually be a really big indicator of different deficiencies, and like right in the corners of your mouth as well. So sometimes in patients you will see that, and you can be like, hey, can we like get a lab to check for their B12? Especially like if you notice that and you're looking at labs and see like that their MCV is high, you're like, oh, I'm seeing this and this, maybe they have a B12 deficiency. And so that's something that's kind of interesting to see, especially when you're like, aha, they actually do have one. All these things were correct. So that's kind of fun to see.
Cool.
Obviously not for the patient. They'll get their B12.
At least you figured it out.
It's still a win for you. It's fine.
Yeah.
Were you talking about there was a lady at your yoga teacher class that had was like a tongue specialist
No,
or something
she did
like that, or?
acupuncture and like cranial therapy, and she looked at all of our tongues and then asked us questions based on that, and then did a very short acupuncture session. And I had never done one before, but she looked at all of our tongues, and she just said that it's just like a map of so many things. And it was, I mean, she totally could have been bullshitting us, and we were like, wow, now looking back, some of the questions she asked like before maybe led her down a path, but she was very confident in her.
She wasn't like the tarot card. Who's the tarot card lady?
I was just gonna say, I'm pretty sure psychics are confident.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what was that the famous one.
Hey,
Sylvia Brown.
Your attitude is half of it. She was very confident. She has a very big practice. It was just really interesting that there was and she had us look at some people's tongues, and then she did the acupuncture, and then we looked at it, and it was different. I don't know what the hell that meant, but it was really, really interesting.
Your tongues are gross.
Yeah, it was just, there was so much. It was really cool.
Mm-hmm.
That's super
weird. Tongues are gross. You see some, if you look up like B12 deficiency tongues or some other ones, like it will make you like want to vomit if you already think tongues are disgusting. Like severe deficiencies. Nasty.
Deficiencies in anything. What's that Paul guy was talking to about? I think it was Paul Saladino was talking about vitamin C. How I think they said like 30 milligrams a day is basically where like your threshold. And there was a study that because everyone wants to take a bunch of vitamin C as they get sick. They say, and it was a study. They say there was a study that actually vitamin C helps your immune system, but an abundance of it doesn't really do much to continue to boost the immune system. But there was a study that was done that they found, I want to say it was at least in like 70% of the patients where a load of vitamin C during the sickness actually reduced symptoms. And I don't understand how that worked, but because my thought was always, you need vitamin C to keep your immune system up. But it seemed like there might've been some difference when a load of vitamin C during the sickness actually helped
I've heard different theories as a nurse in family practice. Some doctors have said to take it daily, and some say as soon as a symptom starts, just load up on it. And I don't know, it's probably per opinion on each physician, but I have heard different. What does Becky say?
I mean, like if you take an abundance of vitamin C, like you said, like you're just going to pee it out. Like with most our water soluble vitamins, like if you take an excess, your body will use what it needs and pee out the rest. So usually I tell patients like if they really want to supplement with like vitamin C or vitamin B, like it's fine if that makes you feel better to do. Like you're probably not going to hurt yourself. If you eat a well-balanced diet, you probably don't need a supplement, especially with our vitamin C and vitamin B that's in like a lot of our foods if you eat a well-balanced diet. That's usually what I try to tell patients, like eat a balanced diet, then you don't need to supplement. If you want to supplement, like take a multivitamin. You don't necessarily need to like, specifically like super supplement in any really one thing. But then if you're getting sick and maybe it's a placebo effect, maybe it really helps. Like if you want to take some vitamin C, like an emergency, totally can do it. Yeah.
How often do you have had people approach you that have some kind of, whether it be they really want to supplement, or the people that come to you with a diet of their, veganism or meat or whatever diet it may be, that's just, they're very dogmatic about it, but they're, for what they need, they could be very wrong. Have you ever had that situation come to you, and how do you handle somebody like that as far as trying to convince them of what they completely believe is not close to what they need?
Yeah. So probably the biggest one I'll see like in my private practice is patients that come to me on like a ton of supplements. And I will usually, like again, in my questionnaire, I ask for like what supplements they're currently taking, and then going through it and actually like totaling doses of things. I will, like, for example, see patients that are taking like a multivitamin plus like a pre-workout plus a like specific sport complex plus a testosterone booster, like all these things. And you like add up, like, for example, zinc. You add up a zinc in all of them, and I'm like, hey, you're actually way over the upper limit of zinc. There is like consequences to taking like excessive amounts of zinc. So I try to present it in like a very like scientific way of like, hey, here's these things. I did the math. Here's what it is. Here's what the upper limit is. I would recommend, and that's usually how I phrase it, I would recommend you discontinue the use of that. But like if you really would still like to take a multivitamin, here is a USP verified resource where you can pick any multivitamin you want that is, you know, gone through safe manufacturing practices. So it still gives science, but then lets the person choose what they want. And same with like pre-workout. Like I don't take pre-workout. Not for me, but some people really love it. Totally fine. I'll be like, okay, the pre-workout you're taking has some concerning ingredients in it. Here's the reasons why. But if you'd like to take a pre-workout, again, here's some NSF Sport certified products. It's like a search engine. You can search exactly what you want. This is what I'd recommend. That's usually how I go about doing it, giving them choice, not telling them like, hey, you're wrong. I can't believe you're doing this. Here's the research. You can make the decision still.
Well, that's a good, sorry, you're gonna.
No.
So that's another good point too. You talked about, you know, obviously, so supplements aren't FDA. Most of them don't go through FDA approval and different things like that. So since you brought that up, what's kind of your PSA on how to find like good supplements, and also if you want to take it into, you know, because it seems like you have some sort of opinion on like organic, GMO, and that kind of direction of things, how people get very dogmatic in that kind of aspect too. What's kind of the...
Yeah. So for supplements, I usually will tell patients and clients, like for most multivitamins or like specific like fish oil or like that kind of stuff, USP verified. Basically, any brand that goes through a USP verification, they go through and make sure that it has like safe manufacturing processes in the same way that like drugs do. So that like if you're taking vitamin C 500 milligrams, they have verified it. That really is vitamin C 500 milligrams. So you know what you're taking. And usually those are actually really affordable. I always get Nature's Bounty and Nature Made mixed up because they sound the same. One of those, like their entire line is USP verified, so really safe, and that's available in like basically every grocery store.
Like a little
also
special emblem on it or something? Like...
Yeah, it's a green and black, and it literally says USP on it. And you'll see that like on those supplements. And also like all of Kirkland, like the Costco ones are. So again, like super cheap. You don't need to spend a ton of money. USP verified. Then if they're interested in more of like protein powders or pre-workout or creatine or like any kind of like that other side of like the supplement industry, I usually recommend NSF Sport certified. So it's a National Sport Federation Sport certified. So like professional athletes like that are getting routine drug tested, like MLB players, NFL, Olympic athletes, they can take those supplements and know there's no banned substances that are going to get them like kicked out of their sport. So again, like, you know what is in that product. So like, that's another thing I'll tell them, like, here's the like resource to go search. You can find whatever you want to take. And if you want to take that, you at least know what you're taking. That's the biggest thing. Because if you don't know what you're taking, like, you should know what you're putting into your body.
Right. So you're telling me don't buy supplements from some dude on a street corner. Is that what you're telling, me?
Probably not the best thing to do.
Okay. Duly noted.
Yeah.
So on that second part of that, how do you...
Yeah.
So from the very opposite end of the spectrum, things that seem like they're so strictly controlled, like the GMOs and all those things, because I think a lot of people have a jaded view of what GMO means, some people still understand what it means and they still absolutely hate it. But some people will say like, well, you know, this is really what it means. This maybe what you think it means, but this is really what it means. And, you know, do you have a particular stance on that whole organic and GMO and?
Yeah. So for the first part, like I come from an agriculture family, which I think is helpful because like farmers feed us. We should probably like be kind to our farmers and realize we depend on them for literally all our food. So people that are like bashing on like agriculture always drive me insane. Like I don't get super passionate about things like or aggressive about things, but like please thank our farmers. They literally feed us. So GMO products, like one, people think like every product in the world is GMO. That is not true. There is a very like small amount of crops that are actually GMOs. Like again with like labeling, something that really pisses me off is you'll see like salmon. Like there's no GMO like salmon. You'll see a box like GMO free salmon. Like there is no GMO, so obviously it's all GMO free. Or like green beans, you'll see that. So it's like a labeling thing that really pisses me off because there's literally of that like one example, no GMO version. So obviously it's GMO free.
Yeah, but aren't they like some of those salmon, they're like dyeing them? So they're like, well, we're putting dye in these, but at least they're not GMO, right? Is that...
Yeah. So yeah, labeling drives me a little crazy. But with GMOs, like I tell patients, there's no research that says it's going to hurt you. There's no research that says like GMOs will hurt you. But that being said, if you prefer to not choose GMO products, that's okay. If you can afford it, if you prefer to choose it, go for it. There is like benefits to some GMO stuff because that means, you know, maybe that plant was modified so it didn't require as much pesticides. So maybe if you care about that part of the environment, maybe that's something that's going to make you choose a GMO. Or if you feel strongly about not having a GMO, choosing the GMO-free version. So again, that's that. With organic stuff, that's probably my bigger kind of like little pet peeve, is people think like organic stuff is all like bougie and like people are doing all this nice, kind things to the plants and whatever. Like, there still is pesticides and GMOs. It just means,
positive affirmation.
It just means those plants had an organic pesticide on it. So again, like labeling, like they think it's all wonderful, but there still is pros and cons to it. And I tell patients again, there's no like research that says like non-organic things are bad for you. But that being said, if you want to choose organic, go for it. Like if you're choosing non-organic and concerned about pesticides, again, wash your fruits and vegetables. Biggest thing there. And like price point, that's something that kills me is I'll have, you know, patients or clients that are like really like budget conscious and really need to watch their pennies and are buying organic things because that's what the media told them they need to do. And so then they're really struggling. And they'll come to me and I'll be like, no, it's okay. Like you can have more fruits and vegetables if you buy non-organic or if you buy the conventionally grown stuff. And it's like a relief to them to see that. Like it's totally safe to do. But if you have the money and want to choose organic, go for it. You can buy it. Not that that makes you any better or your food necessarily any better than the person next to you that needs to eat cheaper and buy the conventionally grown stuff.
Right. For sure. I get that. I do find it weird though. And there's some of the things you buy where you're like, you leave it on the counter for too long and you're like, why is this thing still the color that it was when I bought it? Like, I don't feel like this is right. Like you get a cucumber sitting there for like a month and a half and it still looks perfect. I'm like, I don't know if I trust this cucumber. Yeah. He's got something going on.
Yeah.
Like white bread.
Yeah.
When you're not allowed to mold, I don't like. There's something wrong with that. If it doesn't decompose within a month, maybe we shouldn't be eating it.
Yeah, there's something to be said about like preservatives and things, and comparing like the preservatives and things that are allowed in the U.S. versus other countries, and that kind of stuff, which is a whole different area to like think about, but pros and cons.
I have a question. So Fred he didn't make me, he suggested that I listen to the Paul podcast with Rogan. And I made it like 3/4 of the way. But then a couple days later, I listened to a podcast with a gastroenterologist, and it was a pretty broad question. I think he was asked if there's one thing, if you could only pick one thing that was deficient in humans, what would you pinpoint? And he said for sure fiber. Like absolutely, it's fiber. And then he went on and listed all of these reasons why that totally made sense. And he said, a lot of people say protein. However, you can get protein in all these different sources. And I mean, unless you're trying to, build a body, most people get enough protein to, be healthy. And said that, I don't remember what percentage, it was a large percentage, didn't get the amount of fiber that they need to be healthy. And Paul basically contraindicated that, said the complete opposite. So I said, that would be something to ask her. Obviously, everyone has their own theories, but it was very interesting to hear the same basically question asked the same week and have completely different answers.
Right.
Yeah, I would be agreeing with the gastroenterologist. Yeah, because that was the first thing, honestly, when I looked up his, like the book Carnivores, immediately dietitian brain was like, what about fiber? Like, what about it? And even not just like gastroenterologists, but you see like a lot of doctors that are concerned about fiber intake. Like fiber helps, get bad cholesterol out of our body. Like it helps us promote regular bowel movements. Like it really is beneficial. And I mean, I'm sure there's studies out there that would say like there is conditions where you need a low fiber diet. Like for example, right after like a GI surgery, like your gut needs to rest. So a low fiber diet is indicated there. But I'd be interested to see if there was like a lot of strong research that said for a healthy person that a low fiber diet was better. Yeah. Because there's so much research that supports a high fiber diet for a generally healthy person to improve health or continue health.
We were talking about that, and our 9-year-old said, well, what's fiber? And I was like, well, it's kind of like grains that, it bulks your stool, basically. And she's like, I don't understand what that means. And I was like, I don't really know how to explain that very well, but it's really important. Yeah. And then we were eating, and so we decided what was on our plate, what had fiber in it. And then she didn't ask any more questions, and that basically answered her question enough. But
I do know, like, I know during that one particular interview, he cited some kind of study. And like I said, I haven't dug into it, but that was one thing that was super interesting that they brought up. And he did cite a study that I don't remember exactly what it was. I don't remember if you remember what it was, Tony.
I don't.
What's your take, Tone?
I see patients all the time that have diarrhea or they're constipated, and so
this makes
fiber's a great thing to me. Yeah. So gotta keep those bowels regular.
Yeah, it was just he presented some things that were very against the grain, and at least in that one conversation, like I said, I haven't taken a deep dive on him, but he presented things in a way that, maybe he just used big words like Tony does to me all the time. And I just didn't understand what he was saying, but it was like, okay, like I get, he has something to back it up. You know what I mean? And it's kind of independent research. So it's kind of one of those things. It's like, well, for newfound things to come and for science to move forward, there's always those first few people out in the front lines that everyone's calling, well, that person's crazy. They don't know what to talk about. They thought Albert Einstein was crazy too, but turns out he's just a genius, So, but it was just something interesting that it's very contrary to what most people are saying. So it was like, oh, this is something interesting to look into.
Well, look at the food pyramid with
fats. That's like going back to the food pyramid. Yeah, eat all the carbs you want. They're the best for you. You need them. And then it's like, oh, I'm not supposed to be having 600 grams of carbs a day? Oh, mess that up. Like,
oh my gosh.
They're tasty though.
Yeah. So I actually, for a presentation I was doing for the hospital, we were doing kind of like different forms of like my plate. And so starting out, we talked about like the history of like where my plate came from. So we backtracked, like there was the food pyramid, like the one that has like the colors like this way. Then there's the old school one that's like this way. And back in it's like the 40s or the 50s, the first like food guides that came out, one of them was called the Basic Four. And I kid you not, one of the four groups for a staple in your diet
Cigarettes.
was the butter margarine group. It was literally a group.
I heard about that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, wow. Oh my God.
They had an early start on
very
keto.
interesting.
Yeah, right. Well, I'm surprised. That's why I made the joke. I'm surprised, like back then, that like cigarettes weren't a part of like their healthy diet. Like, because it seems like you watch a movie from like the mid 1900s, like everyone's just chain smoking. They thought it was like, oh, this is healthy.
Yeah.
How do you? I guess how do you stay up? Because it seems like you're very even keeled and sensible about things. So how do you kind of stay on your own path of progression to? Because I feel like you'd be somebody that didn't get like stuck in, something I learned 10 years ago, but it was changing. And how do you keep up on all of your letters behind your name?
Yeah. So nutrition is always changing. I mean, with medicine and science in general, it's always changing. So a few ways that I try to keep up to date is one, like I get like a little email, like news brief from, I forget it's from our academy or whatever. And it's just like a few like little articles. And if any of those like catch my eye, like, oh, that seems like controversial or interesting or something new, like I'll pull it up and look at it. Sometimes it's like something I already know. And I was like, oh, just kidding. Sometimes it's something new or like brings me to look up something else. Seeing a variety of patients. We're the only hospital in the area. So therefore we see literally kids to old people to every like weird thing in between that happens to be in the area. So if I have like a new patient that's something like not routine to me, like I want to make sure I'm prepared to see that patient because I'm their only resource here. So I will spend time researching something new. And also getting like students or interns. That's another way because they're in school and hopefully they're learning the newest thing. So if they come to me and, they're maybe seeing a patient and they're like, hey, this is what I learned in school. I'm like, oh, maybe I'm wrong. I need to research this. So like that gives me an opportunity to have someone tell me something new and check into it, which I think as like people in healthcare, we always need to be open to like the new ideas that are coming in and learn from people because we're not always right. Like old school dietitians that are stuck in their ways, like they're not correct. And like one day I'm going to be an old school dietitian. And if I stay in my ways, I'm going to be incorrect and not helping patients. So just keeping an open mind and looking into the new things that come out.
I think it's a hard thing for people in general to do is to continue to progress with. I always thought, like, I remember being a teenager, looking at like people when they're like 30 and they're like the way they dress. I'm like, look at them dressing like a bunch of old idiots or whatever. Now I'm 30. I look at like the teenager, just like, what the hell are they wearing? Like, it's like, oh, okay, I see how this works now. How do you, I guess just personally, how do you do that for yourself to continue to keep your mind open and adventuring? I mean, obviously you're very adventurous as it is, but mentally, how do you do that? Because I know it feels like a lot of people nowadays are kind of struggling with, whatever it might be, tribalism or whatever, trying to get out and trying to continue to grow and connect with people. How do you continue to do that, just personally?
Yeah, I feel like if you meet someone new, like asking them things and just like continuing to ask questions in like a kind or positive way. I was just having this conversation with one of my friends of being like, we all have very different views, especially now. Like I feel like people obviously have very extreme views sometimes that are highlighted. But if you engage with someone that has a very extreme view from you, like just asking them why they feel that way. Like maybe I 100% disagree with you, but like I should probably understand why you think that way. And maybe if maybe your view is what I would deem as incorrect or whatever, I'm never going to change that view unless I understand why you view that way. So just, I guess, trying to be open, asking questions and having like an open dialogue. Like if I disagree with you, not being like, well, that's wrong, that's stupid. Being like, okay, like, why do you think that way? Like, here's why I think this way. And trying to understand why someone has that, which can be really hard.
That's for sure. But I think we've talked about before too, it's, the capability nowadays is being able to agree to disagree is becoming very difficult in some realms of things.
Well, I think just being open to listening to an intern, I feel like that's probably not the norm. And I think that just humbling yourself and realizing I haven't just spent the last, I don't know, however many years that they have to be in school to be an intern, and realizing that they're a source of knowledge and not, somebody who's just green and they don't know what they're doing. So that's refreshing also. Because we talk about often, I don't know if we just started talking about it because we knew you were coming on the podcast, but the very limited amount of nutrition or any sort of specialty that, especially I'm in family medicine, that our family medicine providers get. And we don't often refer to a dietitian or a nutritionist or, it's here's a handout of low cholesterol medications, and oh, by the way, you're having sciatica, here's a handout of some exercises. It's not, it's just so cookie cutter, and that's not what we need. And so it's just having someone open and listening to that is incredible. Do you get a lot of referrals from physicians for patients? I mean, if someone's diabetic, we'll put in a referral, but it's really not encouraged. I would say it's encouraged, but maybe it's not pushed like maybe it should be.
Yeah, that's honestly a reason that I kind of fell in love with the hospital I work at, is because we do get a lot of referrals from the clinics in town for all sorts of things. Across the board, I would say, diabetic issues are referred to either myself or our diabetes educator, our CDE nurse educator. So those are usually pretty standard. But then I feel like providers here realize when something is out of their scope, that they can't give the absolute best detailed care of oh, this patient is complaining of symptoms that sound like IBS. I'll get a referral that'll literally be these symptoms sound like IBS. Here's a referral. Can you help this patient? Which is awesome. Sometimes we'll get referrals and I'm this isn't nutrition related. I don't think I can help, but at least you're trying, you're saying hey, this is something that I can't figure out as maybe a doctor or a PA or whatever. Could nutrition help? And I don't think that all places are like that, which is something that I really loved about here, is the providers are, for the most part, willing to refer outside of their area and see if someone else can help them, whether it's a dietitian, whether that's a physical therapist, whether that's someone else, which is nice.
Do you have a difficult time? Because you're also a certified personal trainer, correct?
Yeah.
So do you...
I don't really do a lot of that anymore.
No? Okay.
I'm pretty busy.
Do you have I feel like, at least where I'm at, there's a link missing of, we have a diabetic, navigation system where you see a dietitian and you see a diabetes educator, and, then you follow up with your family medicine provider. But no one is showing these people how to exercise. We're recommending that you get so many minutes of cardiovascular activity per week or whatever, but nobody is showing them that. No one is teaching them that. And that's just as big of an issue as it is teaching someone what carbohydrates are, right? Or protein, and it's such a missing link. And as a dietitian, but also someone who understands the importance of exercise, do you ever try to throw that in there a little bit, or?
Yeah. So one, you're 100% right. I wish there was in that kind of little triangle, someone that actually could lead exercise classes, or really one-on-one work with patients in that exercise. But with my patients, a lot of times, I break down, every patient's going to leave with goals. Usually I stick it to 3, no more, because that's overwhelming. But a lot of times my goals, especially for weight loss or diabetes management, is one of those is going to be physical activity, because we know how important that is. And while I can't go through the motions of here's how to do a proper squat form in my visit, it's going to be like, all right, physical activity, what do you like to do? Like, do you like to do yoga? Do you like to walk? Is that overwhelming to go to a gym? Is maybe a YouTube video, something like that. And so making a physical activity goal that they like and can do is, I always incorporate that. That's kind of like within our scope. I can't like go through and like tell a patient exactly how to do the exercises, but at least I can like help them brainstorm and figure out what maybe could fit into their schedule, their lifestyle, and make like a SMART goal that actually will hopefully encourage them to do it.
I think that's really important too, is being able to find something you can stick with. You know, I know I've talked to a lot of people before where they're like, oh, I want to lose weight, this, that, whatever. Well, and then they go from drinking 2 liters of Mountain Dew a day and, Burger King for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And it's like, they're like, I'm going straight to salads. It's like, whoa, like, hey, let's set some realistic goals here. Maybe we just back it down to 1 2-liter, for a couple weeks. And
that's literally like what I'll do.
Well, I think a lot of people, they just don't know. Like they think, oh, well, this is what I have to do. And there's so many extremes these days where you're just like, well, let's take baby steps. Wasn't it? Isn't that the Bill Murray movie? Well, which movie is it? Where he's like baby steps in the elevator. He's like baby steps out the elevator.
I don't know that one.
Oh, it's where it's like he like visits his psychologist like when he's on vacation, but he can't go without him. Oh, you never seen that?
Funny.
It's a hilarious movie.
Funny.
I can't remember the name of it now, but it's a great movie. Baby steps. Yeah, you gotta take baby steps.
It's true. Little steps. Gosh, I'll have some patients that they have this picture in their mind of what a dietitian does. And after they leave, they're like, man, I thought you were going to tell me like I was never going to be able to eat this again or be able to do this again. I'm like, they're like, but you're pretty nice. You said I can like eat this. I'm like, yeah, I'm not like the food dictator over here. Like just small steps. You can still have soda if you really want. Like, let's go from, like you said, literally like from 2 liters to 1 liter. Next time you check in with me, let's see how that's going. Maybe we can cut it down some more. But if I told you cold turkey, you'd probably be miserable. And that's not fun.
Yeah, it's not attainable either. Whatever you're doing.
No.
It's like saying you're going to go out and run a marathon. Well, let's go for a 5K first. Like
or a tough rock.
Yeah. Well, that's well, that's I got swindled into. I got trying to get someone on a podcast, and they said, "Well, if you do a tough go ruck, then I'm all yours." I'm like, "Yeah, sure, let's do it."
He didn't even look it up first.
No, that was like my very first CrossFit competition I did too. I was like, "Yeah, I'll do. Yeah, sure, CrossFit. Yeah, I'll do RX. Why not?" It's a terrible idea. Absolutely terrible.
As you're laying on the floor and Corey and I are yelling at you to get your ass up.
Yeah, it was like the third workout. My legs kind of stopped working, but it was fine.
You looked good doing it though, It's fine. Bodybuilder, powerlifter over here trying to do CrossFit. You looked good doing it.
Let's be honest.
I mean, when you were on the floor and you couldn't move, that was a bit ridiculous. But that lactic acid gets built up and stuff.
Well,
it's hard.
I had a couple of those people who were like, How long you been doing CrossFit? And I'm like, it was like 5 weeks. It's like, really? I'm like, yeah. I feel like at the end of it, they saw me lay on the ground. They're like, oh yeah, that guy's been only doing it for 5 weeks. Yeah, that was a terrible idea.
Becky, I have a question for you. What's your thoughts or opinions on intermittent fasting? I know that's kind of a hot topic right now.
That's a super good question. So pretty big right now. I will say, like usually if a patient comes in to me and they're really intrigued about it, I ask them some questions about like what their lifestyle is. Because right off the bat, for some people, like it's not going to fit in their lifestyle. Like it's just not going to be sustainable. But for some people it is. And then I will kind of start like talking about the fact like, all right, so like, let's say like 1920s, like people like kind of generally ate like in an intermittent fasting pattern. Like they woke up in the morning, ate breakfast, ate lunch, they ate dinner, like they didn't have bedtime snacks, they went to bed. That's just the way it was. And that's the way it was for like a lot of generations before that. So we can intermittent fast. Like it's not going to kill us. On the opposite end of things, like for some people, like it's not going to work, whether it's like blood sugar management or like they have kids and they're working night shifts, like weird things. Um, that like I'm going to tell that patient like intermittent fasting isn't necessarily going to help you. Um, and then I talk about like for weight loss, that's another really big reason people come in and talk to me about it is intermittent fasting can be a form of restriction. And for weight loss, you need to have a restriction, like a caloric deficit or restriction. So whether that's counting calories, whether that's changing your portion sizes, or whether that's putting in a time window where you're restricting where you're eating, therefore having a caloric deficit, it can work for you. So there's like benefits, pros and cons of whether it's going to work. I have some patients, very few that are intrigued about like the like cellular aging and like that kind of process, which is like where a lot of the research actually kind of started and is. And that's like really intriguing. I just don't have a lot of patients that actually are coming to me for that reason about it. They're more intrigued about the weight loss benefits of it. So so it's explaining the different reason why intermittent fasting could or could not work for them.
Do you personally intermittent fast yourself?
So
played around with
during the work week, so during the work week, I don't eat breakfast. I am just like busy, but I also wake up at like 5 a.m. and do a workout in the morning. So I technically like intermittent fast from like 8 to like noon or 8 p.m. to like noon the next day relatively. And that's what I do Monday through Thursday just because it works for my schedule. But on the weekends, like in the summer especially, I'm out hiking all day. So I do not intermittent fast because I would probably like be dying on a mountain if I had no breakfast. Yeah. So I kind of like, I guess naturally like experiment with it like part of my week. And then part of my week, I guess I do more like the traditional like American style of like breakfast, snack, lunch, snack, dinner.
Snack.
So,
Kind of both. That's what like
snack.
when I remember when I was like a teenager into my 20s and doing the lifting and whatnot, one of the big things was constant eating to keep your metabolism going. And people, so that now it's all right, well, the intermittent fasting is a big thing and they talk about the science behind it. And I guess personally for you, do you see a benefit over or it has the snacking? Oh, you need to snack all day to keep your metabolism. Has that been like debunked for the intermittent fasting, or is it just two different ways for two different people?
Yeah, I would say more of like two different ways because like, for example, like athletes or someone that's running like an ultra marathoner, intermittent fasting would not be appropriate. They literally need to be like consistently putting carbohydrates into their body throughout that entire time. Someone that's doing like vigorous workouts is going to need to have, like if they're an athlete, like really need performance, they're going to need that pre-workout carbohydrate kind of loading, whether meal or snack. They're going to need that post-workout recovery, protein, carbohydrates. So intermittent fasting wouldn't be appropriate for them. But if it's like your everyday person, maybe a recreational athlete, they could intermittent fast because their priorities are different and they wouldn't need to be like snacking throughout the day, if that makes sense.
So if you're sitting in a chair staring at a computer screen all day, maybe intermittent fasting's for you.
Yeah, and it could be. And I have patients that like work in an office all day long, and when they come home, like they'll eat maybe regular throughout the day, but when they come home and they're finally like done being like on a computer, they'll have like a gigantic meal and like a gigantic bedtime snack and go to bed. And like, well, why can't I lose weight? And you figure all this out. And you're like, oh, maybe it's this thing. And you're not even hungry. Like maybe intermittent fasting would help you because mentally you can be like, all right, I'm done eating at 9 p.m. Therefore, I don't have this snack. And it works. You just took out 600 calories. Weight loss could maybe happen then.
Right. So it's almost even more like portion control, just understanding what you're putting in. I wouldn't be able to do that whole no breakfast thing. I am a big old bitch if I don't eat in the morning. I get hangry. It's not good.
Cass is silent. Like,
yeah, she's like, I'm not. Yeah,
you're just not a morning person at all, and then you don't feed him.
Yeah, well, it's weird because I can get up early and I'm fine, but like I need like I don't know what it's like. I need like an hour and a half. Well, I think for the longest time I worked and I'd drive. I'd get up super early and I would drive, an hour to work for 7 years. So I had that like 45 minutes, hour where I didn't see anybody, but if I don't eat, it's really bad. Like I get hangry.
I would say I do about the same. Like there was a time where I intentionally did intermittent fasting, and you really have to be able to control your background insulin so that you don't have to eat, and sometimes that's just not going to happen. But there was something to the quickest way to fuck up your blood sugar is to introduce more insulin by introducing food. And so there was something. So I will take breakfast to work and I'll eat around 9, 10. And then ideally I'm in bed at 8:30 because I'm a grandma. And
I feel that.
yeah, right. And I don't even have the darkness that you have. It's just that's how it is. But so I mean, technically, it would end up being intermittent fasting, and I think that there is something to be said about that and being able to control your blood sugars. Obviously, when you have to get up in the middle of the night and get something to eat because you're low, that's something, and you just go with it. But I think that there is having that window, because then you're not so restricted during that window. I think is a good.
Yeah, I think too. Like even during the middle of the day, some people they always talk about the 3 o'clock lull. You're sitting people sitting at their desk. You get tired at 3 o'clock. Well, what'd you eat for lunch? Did you go out and have a giant Big Mac and all the sugar and carbs, and then you just sat there, and then it just your body has to digest all that shit for the next 4 hours, and it's like, well, no wonder you're tired. I feel like crap when I go to fast food too.
Do you intermittent fast, Tony, or you were doing keto?
I mean, did that for a while.
You were doing keto-ish for a while, right?
I guess I don't intentionally try an intermittent fast, but I wake up, have breakfast, I have like 4 eggs, and then just because of work, so I'll go like 12 to 14 hours without eating.
During the day?
Yeah.
It's not even like while you're sleeping?
No, it's during the day.
I could do that during the day if I'm super busy.
Yeah, and I am busy because all I do, I mean, I'm seeing like 20, 25 patients. Like it's just boom, 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 and I'm just charting and doing orders and stuff. And yeah, so recently, the last like 4 or 5 months, that's kind of what I've been doing.
So then you just smash when you get home?
Oh, I don't. It's weird. I eat, but I don't even like smash. I don't eat like giant meals anymore. I don't like. I just don't.
How much do you think there's some kind of like neurological thing that goes into that? Because I know like when I'm busy, if I'm busy for 14 hours straight, like really focused, I'm okay without eating.
You come home with low blood sugar because you haven't ate anything.
Yeah, but as soon as my mind slows down, my body's like, hey, MFer, I need to eat now. Feed me. Like,
yeah, there's definitely something to be said about one, like the mental aspect, like being distracted, like your body prioritizing other things over hunger. Also, like hunger hormones are a real thing. And I was just reading something more about like exercise induced, well, I say exercise induced anorexia, but basically like exercise induced like not wanting to eat. I don't know if you guys have ever like experienced that, but like after a hard workout, your body's hormones are like, you don't really want to eat right now.
CrossFit.
Which is kind of counterintuitive of what you'd think. But like I was kind of wondering, while you're not vigorously exercising, your body is still like actively in motion throughout a work day, that like combined with the mental aspect of like that plus hormones and activity, it's like your body's just being like, I don't want to eat right now. And then eventually it's that delayed effect of like how you experience for like, I need to eat right now.
Do you feel hungry, or you just don't think about it because you're so busy?
Yeah, I think I don't think about it. So I think I'm just like you said, when you're just busy, you're focused at task at hand. And so are there any foods where you're like, just no, like there's no benefit to eating a certain food or something that you're just like, absolutely not. Like I wouldn't recommend eating that under any, like for me, I don't, and not that I haven't drank pop in like probably 20 years at least.
Yeah.
So, and I just, pop juice, just, I just don't. I'm not saying, there's nothing wrong with it. And I'm a moderation kind of person. Like, when people have hypertension or hypercholesterolemia or things like that, and they come to me and they're like, you're going to tell me I can't eat anything with salt or I can't eat steak. And I'm like, no, like you just, you need to monitor and limit what you eat. And in, like you said, in moderation. I just didn't know if there was any food or drink where you're like, I don't see a point in ever consuming that or.
Yeah, you kind of hit it on the head of like pop soda. Like I'm never going to tell someone to go drink it. Like usually it's like if you already are drinking like that, we're talking about decreasing it, maybe still including it if you really like it in moderation. But I think it's a dietitian thing of like calories from like sugar and beverages. Like I don't drink juice. Like even if like you 100% juice, you can drink like a 8-ounce serving as like a serving of fruit. But like me mentally, like I don't know the last time I just poured myself a glass of juice. Like it's weird to me. Sometimes for patients, like if that's the only way they'll do fruit, they can do it. But yeah, I very rarely am recommending like a beverage, especially sugar or like carbs, as something. And yeah, I don't know the last time I really had pop or soda either. I think I stopped drinking that like in like late high school.
Yep.
Yeah.
Freaking COVID, man.
Yeah. Well,
I never drink soda. Years and years and years. And COVID happened. And it's literally the only negative effect that I got from it is we had a lot of whiskey in the house. And I was like, I need a mixer because some of it I can shoot it just fine. And some of it I can sip it. But when you're buying like the Benchmark, you need something to mix it with. And it was like, oh, Diet Coke. And now I have like 2-ish a week. And I
So you haven't had that many recently.
Yeah, but when you go from not having any at all from the time you're in 8th grade, and it's like, oh man,
Yeah.
But back to the juice thing.
Yeah.
When we had Kai, we never gave her juice ever. That was not an option. We didn't have juice, and mainly it was because we didn't like. There's no benefit to it, like at
Here's
all.
an orange.
Even for little ones, and we justified it by when we go somewhere and you want to have a piece of cake, my either mom brain or diabetic brain is not going, wow, there's a lot of sugar in that, and in that, I don't even feel bad. Like have your piece of cake. Like you don't get your juice. There's just no benefit to it, and now it's like not a thing. I mean, if she's with grandma and grandpa, they'll ask her if she wants it, but she never asks for it. It's, some kids, it's juice as soon as they can have a sippy cup. And and I guess there's nothing wrong with it. We just thought if you're going to consume those calories and that sugar, like have something that you are going to enjoy, like the cookie that I know you're going to ask me for anyways.
Yeah, make it not a normal thing all the time so you can actually appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yes.
What's your take on sugars? Like sugars versus the artificial sugars, like the erythritol and the Splenda and monk fruit sugar and all stuff like that.
Monk fruit?
Yeah.
Is that a thing?
Yeah, there's there's a ton now. So the way I usually approach it is a lot of times patients that'll ask me that are patients that are coming to me for weight loss. So first I usually start out being like, sugar across the board is basically the same calories in nutrition, whether that's honey, whether that's maple syrup, whether that's like table sugar, brown sugar, molasses, like they are literally like the same, because some patients come in with the conception of like, oh, if I'm not putting sugar in my coffee, but I'm putting honey in it, it's better. It's the same calories. So I usually start off that way. And I'm like, if you like those, that's fine. Can we talk about decreasing portion size? And then they usually have questions about artificial sweeteners. And I usually start off like, the FDA has said these are safe. If you really go into the detail, there's a really long document on the FDA website of like the upper limit of all the artificial sweeteners. And it's something like absurd with each one of like 76 packets of Splenda is the upper per day, like, and like 1,000 packets of stevia, like something like really crazy. So I tell them they are safe. Yeah. So yeah, that's a disgusting amount, but like they're safe. And if you're like kind of weaning down, and like, again, weight loss has to happen through a caloric deficit. So if you feel like you want to go from a full sugar option, but you can't completely get rid of it, like regular soda, maybe using a soda that's sweetened with an artificial sweetener could help you with that carbonated taste, flavor, preference, whatever, but have less calories so weight loss can happen in a safe way. But then if you really don't like artificial sweeteners, you don't have to use them. You could use a regular sugar, but in a smaller amount. And then if you eventually like soda, want to completely get off it, it could be that stair step again, like baby steps. Regular soda, Maybe then we go to diet soda with those artificial sweeteners. You don't really love it. Eventually we come back down and maybe do a half a bottle of the diet soda and eventually go to nothing. So like the baby steps, there's a spectrum of it, but they're all safe. It's kind of figuring what fits for you, your lifestyle.
Do you think some of those, to his point, and do you think some of those, if you're going to have it, not just necessarily just on a calorie aspect, but a health aspect, I guess it kind of goes back to the GMO type thing, is, the different chemical strands and whatnot. Do you think there is a difference between the natural, like honey sugars versus, your, just processed type sugar on a non just calorie category, but otherwise as far as health goes?
Yeah. So like, for example, like your sugar alcohols, sometimes can have a laxative effect. So telling patients like, hey, if you're having a lot of GI symptoms, maybe like, let's look at your diet. And if you're having a ton of sugar alcohols, probably not the best thing for you. Maybe you need either a different artificial sweetener to choose in your food, or maybe you need to stick to regularly sweetened things if you need something sweet. So that's like a big one. If you're like a baker, like talking, like if someone really loves baking and being like, actually this artificial sweetener will not bake well. It'll actually turn to a terribly bitter taste. So you need to use regular like sugar or sweetener or a different artificial sweetener. So there's a place for everything, and like personal taste preferences. Like some artificial sweeteners taste good to some people and taste absolutely disgusting to other people. So obviously you don't want to be eating something that tastes disgusting to you. Choose something different, whether that's regular sweetener or a different artificial sweetener.
And I've always found too, I know, like trying to cut back, because I did the same thing years ago. I stopped drinking soda. I will have one, every in a blue moon if we go watch a movie, whenever we're allowed to do that again.
Yeah.
But to me, like, I guess I've found it helpful, and this is kind of the information that I've passed along to some people that I've talked to. It's so how do you get people to transition from things? Because I know for me it was like I never was a huge like candy or junk food type of person, but when I was working out a lot, it was all right. Well, if I feel like having something sweet, maybe I'd have like a protein bar instead of candy bar or something like that. And I guess sometimes people benefit from replacing something with another thing. Like, do you have success with that, or how do you get people to kind of wean down off the things that aren't the greatest for them? Because I know people, I think one of the biggest problems people have is, well, it's like, oh, I'm going to stop smoking. And I picked up eating instead, like.
Yeah. So usually I approach it in a few different ways. Like I'll give options. So like, for example, I'll use soda again, because that's a big one. I'll be like, okay, you really like soda. We could work on decreasing the portion size. That's one option, option A. Option B, we could switch to a diet soda. Option B. Option C, we could alternate days. Like, here are 3 options. All of these are going to decrease the amount of soda you're going to do, or the calories you're going to do. What do you think will work best for you? And then the patient, again, can like choose what they think will work, those baby steps. Sometimes another option I'll do with like patients, especially if it's like they feel like they're eating like tons, or they really like have a guilty sweet tooth thing or something like that. I'll be like, well, I hate the idea of like saying a cheat meal, but like maybe you really like this. Instead of having it every single day, could we schedule it to be on Fridays as your end of the week treat? You go out and get this, thing that you really like that's a ton of calories. Or finding maybe a portion size that's smaller that you can have every day versus like the XL bag of chips. So there's like different options, and it's finding what someone actually thinks they can do in their daily life.
I think it's really have that buy-in, and I feel like we've talked about that too before. Tony, is with some of your patients, is the biggest thing is them having the buy-in of being able to feel like they can do it, or something that they feel like that they can accomplish. And
yeah, for sure. Let me ask this: I feel like obesity. I feel like in society now, if you comment on it, it's almost like taboo. Like, oh my God, you can't say someone's obese, or you can't, in your opinion, is there anything good that comes from being obese?
So I guess kind of I break this into like a difference. So there's obesity with metabolic complications, which is most cases. And you do have your kind of subsets of obesity with healthy metabolic things, again, a smaller subset. And then you have your people that technically are in like a normal BMI with terrible metabolic things. So there's like the spectrum. I do think that there's not benefits of obesity. There's obviously like complications and risk, but I think the biggest thing as healthcare providers is in how we address obesity. Like, I don't think we should ever like shame or guilt someone or be negative about it. Cause like, again, with anything, like no one is ever going to change if we come at them negatively. And I think that's been like the culture or the way things have been for so long that it feels like a really drastic shift. And maybe people have taken it to the extreme in some cases and feeling like we can't say like obesity is an issue, because it definitely is an issue. But realizing like as healthcare practitioners, like we need to be understanding and figuring out how we can help our patients, which I think has been a positive trend we have started to see in healthcare, is being a little bit more caring and figuring out how we can help patients, because patients know they're overweight or obese, and a lot of times they're like embarrassed or like feel stigmatized and don't feel comfortable asking for help.
Well, and to add on to that, I think the system is broken. I mean, you can almost compare it to people who make just enough money that they can't get any assistance, but they can barely live. So I do a lot of prior authorizations for medications. And we have patients who, the doctor will want to prescribe them, a weight loss medication, or put in a referral to see a dietitian. But their BMI isn't quite big enough, or isn't quite high enough. So we have had to tell patients, for you to get approved for this medication, you have to gain 7 more pounds. Like so where I work as employees, to be able to qualify to see a registered dietitian for the weight loss program to help your insurance premium, you have to have a certain BMI. So I have had coworkers who have had to gain weight to qualify. And that just blows my mind. That's just a side note. But it's just, we're not helping these people, right? Like,
there's definitely some broken things.
Yeah, we're not helping.
Yeah. At something you said too, where you, talking about, whether it be obesity or something, whatever it is, you mentioned that sometimes we maybe go too far the other direction. And it's funny, Tony and I talked about this the other day. It was over text, one of my ranting things that I send him. But I feel like that's a problem we have in society today, is where we go so far one way, and then we're like, whoa, we're too far. So we start heading the other way. And it's like this rubber band effect where we just keep on bouncing off of these extremes. It's one thing to shame somebody, but how do you have that conversation where it's like, okay, this is a bad path to go down? Or how do you think approaching some of those sensitive conversations, whatever they might be, of, you don't want to be aggressive and you don't want to shame somebody or whatever that might be, but at the same time, it's somebody that has good information. How do you think you go about sharing that in a respectful way to get people to listen? And maybe that's the hard part, is getting people to listen and, being able to listen, like you talked about earlier. Do you have some kind of...
I think sometimes it helps when patients actually have an objective thing, like patients that come in and instead of just being like, oh, you're overweight, you're obese, objectively, your cholesterol is high. this means you could have an increased risk of cardiovascular complications. There is a risk. Patients actually see there's a complication here. So when they actually are presented with a health risk, then you can be like, hey, here are some things we could do to reduce that risk. And so seeing that there's a benefit, I think, can sometimes help patients feel comfortable instead of just being like, hey, you need a change. Well, why do I need a change? Because there's a risk. Do you want that risk? If you do, all right, you're accepting that risk. But if you don't, then they're more likely to feel comfortable going down a path of change.
It makes sense, giving them reasons why. Mm-hmm. No, like it's not just you need your BMI to be below this number. I mean,
right, that's
you go to the doctor's office and your BMI is high all the time. And so it's not just, okay, we want your BMI here because that's where you're healthy. Okay, well, what does that mean? Well, let's just focus on the issues or the risks that you have now. And in doing that, we're likely going to bring your weight down, which is going to take care of all these other risks that you have. So that's a good idea. It's a good perspective to just tackle the actual risks that are there.
And being the only person that isn't in some kind of healthcare field here, I feel like I've heard all three of you at some point or other essentially discuss in a roundabout way of how maybe skewed our health system is. Do you think there's any way to change that,
change from a reactive to a proactive healthcare society?
And actually be able to use some kind of the knowledge that we've gained over the years.
Not unless you start your own insurance company and start paying for stuff.
I hear insurance companies make a lot of money.
Gosh, yeah, I wish our healthcare was more, preventative, focusing on the preventative medicine instead of being like, oh, yeah, you already have insanely high cholesterol. Now you're going to see me, instead of teaching patients about like basic nutrition things at the beginning. And from an insurance perspective, every state's Medicaid requirements are a little differently, but like here, I was looking up our Medicaid stuff the other day for patients, and if you're over the age of 21, you don't qualify for dietitian services under Medicaid. They won't reimburse you.
Regardless
Which I'm like, why is that?
Regardless of your diagnosis? Like you could have a...
I'm like, why is that fair?
That doesn't make
But if you're under 21, if you're under 21, for the most part, you can come see a dietitian fully reimbursed. I'm like, this does not seem fair at all. What about a 26-year-old that they're still young? They have plenty of life. Why are we not giving them preventative services that are fully reimbursed? Obviously, these patients need assistance and coverage. They get cash pay, but you're not probably going to want to come in and pay for that. It's just mind-blowing to me we're not giving them help, because that is going to help reduce their medical bills overall if they can come in earlier and address this.
Do you think there's something devious to that? Because I feel like there's some things when you talk about insurance companies and healthcare in America and some of the things they do, it's I feel like you're just doing it just to make money now. How much do you think that really goes on?
I mean, I just hope that that's not the case. Sometimes I just want to maybe look on the bright side of things, but sometimes you just look at it and you're like, this makes no sense. Why is this the way it is? This does not seem beneficial to literally anyone except people that are making money from this, which is heartbreaking. And if you think about it long, it's real depressing.
Well, it's the whole pharmaceutical conversation. Some of that's it just doesn't make sense.
The cost of insulin.
Yeah.
They literally sold the patent for $1.
Yeah.
Once.
And people are going to Mexico and Canada to get, pharmaceuticals that they can get other places. Well, at the same time, though, we had a conversation early on with Rick, and he was talking about the research and development that the U.S. does, which, okay, that's the most plausible explanation or reason, I guess, that I've heard, I think, ever.
That we go about, we do a lot more?
We do so much more research and development that's why, seeing that we have a private healthcare industry, we can do a lot more research and development because they're funded. And then basically
But then you go to Europe and those patents are recognized, and then you can get the medication for so much cheaper. I saw something interesting, and I don't really want to get into it, but it was like they said, how come heroin addicts can get Suboxone or methadone for free, but diabetics can't get insulin for free?
I've seen that, and I don't want to get into it, but I don't think that one trumps the other. I think that there is a need, right? But also, like, I mean, my ER, the trip there was really fucking expensive, right? Like, that's a lot. But I also have insurance. I don't have Medicaid or, Medicare or whatever, and I pay a lot monthly. And I have really good insurance. I can't fathom the people that have to ration their insulin or who can't afford their rescue inhaler, that have a job and their insurance just chooses not to cover, or they'll only cover one per 30 days. And that's been my job the last 5 years. Every day is prior authorizations, trying to get things approved for patients. And it's generally needed. Obviously, like, we're not pushing through, like, we don't even do prior authorizations anymore for over the counter, because 95% won't pay for something that you can get over the counter. 3 years ago, they would. Now, sorry, you have to pay for your baby aspirin out of pocket. I'm sorry. Or anything for, now I can't even, like, think of anything. But there's just, doctors prescribe what they feel is best for patients, and sometimes we can switch to generic, but sometimes you have to try 3 other medications in that class. And if one's contraindicated, then you have to do an appeal, and that's 15 days minimum. And by then, patient has already paid out of pocket, and some of it's affordable and some of it's absolutely not. And do you run into that, Aunt, with your...
I mean, I just always smile and laugh, and I'm like, cool. This person that doesn't have any medical degree or anything like that is dictating the way that I have to prescribe.
Oh, but they'll put at the bottom, we're no way dictating your care. We're just telling you, basically, we're not going to cover it.
Yeah, I've
literally had 30-minute conversations with Care Source on, like, why someone needed something, and I was like, cool, let me see your piece of paper. I'll show you my piece of paper. Like, I'm not trying to do this to burden you. I'm trying to do this to help a patient, and I actually know what I'm talking about.
Or what about, like, straight across the board, most insurances won't cover meds for erectile dysfunction, but then you have those patients who actually have BPH and they need that medication and it helps both, but they also have ED listed on their chart, and after reviewing the chart, nope, ED doesn't. Okay, but this patient also has BPH, and now I have to write a letter explaining that they actually needed that. They needed it for that first, and this ED is actually just a secondary diagnosis, and it's just the system is just
it just seems to be so much red tape and bureaucracy. And I mean, do you deal a lot with that with what you do, or do you just forget about it and bake some bagels and be happy anyways?
I wish. At the hospital, I definitely deal with it. We actually had a really good example of this that made me so angry. One of the dietitians was doing one of the referrals for a tube feeding patient. So here in Alaska, like, it's hard to get tube feeding supplies. Like, you have to be, like, aware, like, of the order, like, make sure it gets in because it has to come in on a barge or be shipped in from somewhere. So, like, this patient had a peg tube placed, came to us for a referral, like, needed this tube feeding, and, like, she saw them or the recommendations, faxed it over, like, all of the steps she needed, and insurance wasn't going to cover it. And it's like, excuse me, this patient literally cannot eat. They're undergoing chemotherapy. Like, why are you not going to cover it? And it was like a bunch of red tape of being like, this needs to be approved because it cannot be shipped down until you approve it. Like, and we're waiting on this. Like, it's going to be steps, and this patient can't eat. Like, what do you mean? Eventually, it finally got taken care of, but it's just like, how can you just not approve it? This is a very basic need. This patient needs food, basically, and you're going to say, like, no? Like, it's wild.
it's so much paperwork, and then people like they see the number, and it's maybe that's what it is. People, there's so many just people. They're like, oh well, I mean, we've ran into it before where it's like, well, your refill date's not till August 15th, and it's August 12th, so you're just gonna have to go without your life-saving medicine for 3 days. Wait, what? Like that doesn't make any sense. Like let's use our brains here.
Yeah.
Like maybe that's the problem. People just aren't using their brains anymore. Like they're not thinking about.
Honestly, sometimes I think that they just wonder how much the doctor's office is going to push back, because there are some people who say, "Oh, I'm not going to take that medication," or all right, well, we'll switch you to a generic, even though I truly believe it's probably not as beneficial. Or, you know, like for your thyroid, sometimes brand just works and generic does not. But insurance rarely doesn't pay for it, or you have to trial the brand or the generic for 3 months. And I honestly think it's taking the time to call the insurance, and there's that little pushback. Like, well, how much does the patient want it? I honestly think that it's just, and I mean, the rules and stuff make sense sometimes. It's just the really obvious ones, like a feeding tube. Like, there's no way around that. There's not another option that they can try for 3 months. It's just like, I can't not have insulin for 3 months. You don't need to do a prior authorization because I still am going to have this diagnosis. Like this doesn't need, but every 3 months I have to verify that yes, I am diabetic, and
my
yes,
organs didn't just magically start working
and
properly.
it's like, that doesn't make sense to. But
no.
What were you gonna say?
Oh, I get that on dosage increases for dealing with like Suboxone and things like that, and I'm like, oh, so I don't get the dosage increase, or it takes longer than the 24 hours, and then that person goes and has cravings and they use heroin, and then they die because you wanted to save you wanted to save a little bit of money,
Right?
Yeah.
Let me ask you this about Alaska. In terms of just like people being active in obesity there. Do you find that there's less obesity there than, say, like Ohio? I know that, you know, when I went from Ohio to Colorado, Colorado Springs, Denver, and I don't know if it's like this because it's been a long time, but man, people just, I didn't see as many obese people in Colorado as I felt like I saw in Ohio. What's Alaska like?
So I'd have to look and like see the actual like percentage of like overweight and obesity compared to other states. But I feel like in general, like you mentioned with like Colorado, in places that the culture is active, there seems to be like less prevalence of less prevalence of obesity and overweight. So I kind of feel like that's the way it is here. Like, of course, there's the exceptions of people that like don't enjoy the Alaska like outdoor experience. But here there's a lot of people that do, whether it's like hiking, skiing, running, like hunting, because hunting here is not the same as hunting in other places. Like you literally have to like go like hike across mountains to go find what you want to hunt.
Do you guys have any spare mountains you could send to Ohio to help with the obesity population here?
Yeah, I like snowboarding. That sounds cool.
Yeah, good. I was telling my friends like Ohio, very flat. And I was like, I love the mountains here. Like when I was home, I miss it. And I was like, but I will say, the only mountain where I'm from is literally a dump. Like it's disgusting. From where I'm at, very flat, I can see for miles. And you can see this mountain that is a dump. I was like, and that's where I'm from. The only mountain is literally a dump.
And nobody wants to come visit you at home.
Yeah, nope.
It's nice in the fall though.
Yeah.
That lasts for 3 weeks.
Yeah, it lasts for 3 weeks. I don't know. It's almost, well, I guess halfway through November, and it was what, 70 degrees the other day, or 75 for a while. So it was weird.
Wow. Yeah, nope. Snowy and icy here.
Yeah, I was gonna say the mountain behind you looks like it's just about covered in snow. So
Yep.
Pretty cool wildlife there.
Yeah, have you hit a moose?
So there's no moose in Juneau and Southeast Alaska. But did see moose when I was up north, and they're gigantic and also like terrifying. In Anchorage, we were biking on like the city bike trails this summer, and the moose just stopped like on the trail, probably like 15 to 20 yards in front of us. And like moose are scary and they can be like aggressive. And it just like stopped and like locked eyes with us, and we were like, oh shit. And like literally backed away, and it like just didn't move off the trail and was just like staring at us. We're like, finally
win,
it left.
Yeah.
You win.
I feel like they know they're like,
Yeah.
I'm big enough.
Any bears or wolves or anything like that?
So we have wolves here. You don't typically see wolves unless you're like way out, like way off trails. Like if you're like backpacking, like out, because they stay hidden. Bears, you see black bears like all the time. We joke and call them trash bears because like out in the valley where like more people live like closer, bears get into trash like all summer long, just whatever. And we have brown bears, not as many brown bears on Juneau, but on some of the islands, there's a ton of brown bears. I think it's Admiralty, which is like one of the little islands right near us. There's like one brown bear per like every square mile, like very dense brown bear population. So if you go over there to hunt, a really good hunting spot for people, like you carry a gun. You do not go over there without other people and guns, like, because there's brown bears everywhere. And if you encounter a brown bear, like, you will die, like, if it's coming at you.
I feel like that's how you should have to hunt. You know, here people are like, oh, you know, they have in these like closed in areas, and it's really not fair to the wildlife.
No apex predators.
I feel like you need to even the playing field a little bit. That's risky.
I have to have the risk that I might be hunted.
Yeah,
well.
I like it.
That actually did happen. It's a terrible story. It happened recently. It was like a couple months ago. A kid from Ashland worked for a tree company or whatever, but ended up going up to Alaska to moose hunt with a couple of buddies, and he was field dressing this moose that they shot, and his buddy was packing the meat out, and his buddy came back and saw a brown bear and had a 10 millimeter and shot it like 3 or 4 times. It didn't even kill it, and his buddy who's field dressing it got attacked and killed.
From Ashland?
Yeah, he was from Ashland, and they ended up finding the bear, and they killed it. But man, it was crazy. I watched an interview with I think it was his fiance, and she was like, "Yeah, I got the call that you know my fiance or boyfriend or whoever got killed by a bear," and she's like, I laughed. I was like, "Haha, yeah, right. That doesn't actually happen."
Yeah.
And she's like, "It actually happened." Not to be a Debbie Downer, but I was like, it legitimately does happen. What about mountain lions? The cougars there?
No, not here. I don't know if there's any in other parts of Alaska. But yeah, there's like some, I forget the statistics, but like your odds of like dying in Alaska or going missing are like significantly higher than like other parts of the U.S. because
I was going to ask
I mean,
that.
it's a pretty big place. I mean, people don't realize how big it is.
You hike a lot and you run and things, and from what it looks like, you're there hours and hours. Are you usually by yourself? And if so, do you feel pretty safe? And how long did it take you to feel safe?
Do you have like a GPS tracker that you take with you?
Yeah, like you let a friend know where you're going.
Yeah, so I always let one of my good girlfriends, Megan, she always gets a text of like, this is the trail I'm doing, this is the time I'm going, this is my expected length, be concerned if I don't check in by X time. Always do that, so at least like worst case scenario, something happens, they know where to go looking for me, because that's like the biggest thing. Like it's vast out here. If they have no idea where to start looking, like you're screwed. Like they're not going to find you. So I always have like kind of the emergency plan of like someone knows where I'm going. And then I take stuff with me. And I usually, the trails here are like, you need to know what you're doing on the trails, but you're not like backpacking by yourself out like in the interior. Like people could find you. But it takes a while to get comfortable, I would say. So like I start on, like when I first got here, I would go on trails that like very well trafficked, and like building your like knowledge of the trails, like, and being aware of things. Like in the winter, like avalanches are a real thing. Like I don't go out on avalanche prone trails by myself, like not a smart idea. I could go on like a meadow trail where there's no avalanche risk, and they have signs posted for like avalanche prone trails here. like just being safety aware about things. And like sometimes on a brand new trail, I literally will only go out maybe part of it and then come back and like build my way up to like really know the trail. And I really trust my intuition. There will be times that I've been out and I'll be like, something just doesn't feel right. I don't know what it is, but like I'm going to turn around, and I 100% will always trust my gut because it's right. Whether that maybe means there was a bear seen out on that trail later, or like I know I'm tired and if I stay out longer, maybe I'm gonna fall. Like I trust my gut.
Better be safe than sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there anything in Alaska that you can't get that you could get back in Ohio, like food wise, or anything that you just miss?
He's always the rarities guy. What kind of rarities could he have?
Oh my God, yeah. So whenever you leave here, that's like the thing. Like people like tell me about the food you got. Like it's a thing. Like you want to hear what people's food experiences were outside of here, because we only have the food that's like right here, and we don't have a Chipotle, which I never thought I'd like miss like a chain restaurant, but I miss Chipotle.
You're really helping this jealousy come down. I'm like, this is what I needed. Yeah.
Yeah, I miss Chipotle, and whenever I leave, I always like I have to get an ice cream spot because like we have like one or two ice cream places here, but like they're either really expensive or like not that amazing. So I always have to get ice cream. Yeah, just like any new food. It's so good when you get out of here to just eat different food.
Are groceries more expensive where you're at, and is like what's house prices there? They're pretty expensive in Alaska.
Yeah. So you definitely get like Alaska-fied. You get used to things. You're like, oh, this is just like normal. I mean, because they do account for cost of living, so like you do make more money here. But yeah, things get expensive. So like when I go home and I'm like, oh my God, like your milk, like what's milk for you guys right now? Like $1.99 or something like that.
Around like $2. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it's like $3.29 here. Like, so things are definitely like more expensive. Like restaurants are more expensive. Like a burger here is probably like $13, $14, like to go to like kind of like a pub kind of place. And like back home, like, oh, you guys got like a burger and fries for like $8. Like your bar tab was what? Like those kind of things. But you just get used to it. Like whatever. It's not like at least where like here food prices are expensive, but like if you lived like somewhere where they have to fly in your groceries, like a bush community, then it's like stupid expensive. Like, and they're typically people aren't eating a lot of like fresh fruits and vegetables because that's dumb expensive, or it's going to be like spoiled by the time it gets there. So they'll even come here sometimes on like the ferries and go to Costco and like stock up on things because at least it's cheaper and whatever you're eating canned vegetables for a while, but you do it. House prices here are like really expensive because again, it's an island, so there's only a limited amount of like ability to build, and again, shipping and materials super expensive. So like houses are smaller and more expensive. I would say like 300,000 for a house that's probably like 1,300 square feet.
Oh, wow. You got to be able to heat it.
Yeah, they're small. Like what you could have a house for here, you could have like a real nice house in Ohio. I'll say that.
Got you.
Yeah, it makes sense. Well, we talked about that too. What was it? It was with Paul. I don't remember if we talked on the podcast or not. We just spoke to a local brewery owner talking about house prices because he was thinking about looking for a house, and it's like even in the last couple of years, even here, just the prices just shot up. And like you said, especially with COVID and just getting supplies. So I can only imagine getting supplies to an island would be not the easiest thing, you know.
Yeah.
When it comes to big stuff like that, timber and lumber and whatnot, that'd be a struggle.
Where you're at, is it pretty progressive? Like we're in Wayne County, which you came here to Orville, and it's pretty conservative. So how is it where you're at?
How's 2020 been in
Yeah.
Alaska?
So Juneau is like this weird little pocket in Alaska. Like people kind of compare it to like an extension of like Seattle. Actually pretty liberal here, and it's the capital, so you have like legislative like session and people come in. So I think that does help. Really big tourism industry, different ideas. So definitely more liberal favoring compared to like where I grew up in Ohio. A lot of the rest of Alaska, very red and a lot more conservative. So it's kind of interesting here. Like for being a really small community, like we have like it's closed now, but we had like a drag show, like bar, which like people would come and be like, wait, what? You're like a small little like Alaska community and you have like a drag show community? I'm like, yeah, I didn't know that either, but here we are, like, in a big arts community, like, so different than a lot of parts of Alaska, but it's pretty cool.
Since you touched on the subject and we've established that you're an even-keeled person, at least we think so, how do you think, because there's obviously a giant divide that's been growing, how do you think as normal, maybe not normal is not the right word, but level-headed people, how can you think we can kind of start pulling that back together? Because it just seems like everyone just hates each other all the time, and it's like, why? Like, what are we doing? You know, do you think you can?
Yeah, I've had a lot of these conversations with some really good girlfriends here lately, and it all just kind of comes back to being like understanding why people feel a certain way or vote a certain way. Because like I have family from where I come from, very conservative, like family that is more Republican, or maybe they voted for Trump for economical reasons or whatever. And it's understanding why they vote that way and asking questions, and then maybe saying like, hey, I feel this way, or people feel this way, or whatever, having that conversation, explaining why they feel that way. And being like, why do you prioritize these things? Here's why I prioritize these things. And maybe seeing where we can find a middle ground of being like, hey, we both realize we value X, Y, Z. Can we come together on that? Maybe we can realize like prioritizing this is not as important as this, vice versa. And just like coming at it with like love. Like, it just bothers me so much when you see people just attack someone. Like, there's no benefit to that. If you want someone to change their opinion, just be like, hey, I hear what you're saying. Here's what I'm thinking, blah, blah, blah. Instead of being like, you're wrong, you're dumb, you're ignorant. Like, I don't know, just trying to understand.
That's a good point. I think we've talked about it tons of times here. Like, that's just to open that communication back up between people and just sit down and have conversations. I think that's a big piece of it. I think we've seen it. The more and more we do it, it's just, everyone's different and everyone has that different opinion, and, might do you some good to listen.
Well, it's just like how you mentioned how you speak to a patient who, you've established that you're obese or that you need to lose weight or lower your cholesterol or whatever. And it's how you approach them. You can't approach them in this, with a negative tone to start off, because they're going to get defensive. That's how it is. But if you approach them with love, like you said, or if it's something different, with science or with research or with, understanding and, just how you present it, like you said, is huge in so many different things. Someone is just as sensitive to maybe their weight as they are to who they want to vote for or what they.
Absolutely.
So however you approach them with that it's going to set the tone for how they're going to react.
Sounds like people don't care what you know until they know that you care.
Yeah. That's really good. I think that, and I'll add on just the ability to, maybe you don't have to want to, but you have to acknowledge that you might be wrong. That, I know, at least for me, that's been a huge step for me, of being able to doing this and talking to people that are super knowledgeable about food that I have no idea, you know, half the things that they know, or jujitsu or whatever it might be. It's like, oh, like,
Yeah.
there's a lot of things that I don't know. Maybe the things I think I know,
Yeah.
I don't really know that well. Like it's so
Yeah.
learning from other people has just been it's super cool experience. And seeing the path that, you know, someone like you has taken, I think that's been a huge piece of, you know, what got us to this point is see, like I said in the beginning, like social media was like one of the benefits of it right here. It's like we didn't really know you, but she knew you and talked to you. And like, it's like, look at this, like, look what she's doing. Like, how cool is that? Like, it's super awesome to be able to see the world through other people's eyes, especially when it's a good way and not hatred and all those other things. So it's been really awesome to be able to follow your journey, you know, vicariously.
Thanks.
Yeah, it is really cool. There are some times where I use you where, like, I don't know, it was over the summer. I wanted to wear like a tank top, but I didn't want to wear a bra. And I was really like going back and forth. And I was like, Becky is freeing, like, she's okay with not wearing a bra. Like, and I had to like justify it. I'm like, I feel like we've discussed it, or I've just seen what she shares. She's totally fine with freeing the titties. And Fred was like, I don't give a fuck what you or Becky do with your boobs. Wear a bra. Don't wear a bra. I don't care. But I was like, she's fine with it. And she's respected. She's a professional. I think it's okay. It's just nice that you just have such a variety and you just put it out there, and it's just really nice.
Thanks. Oh yeah, I hate wearing a bra whenever I come from work. Never wear it. If I happen to be like wearing one like after work, sometimes people are like, are you wearing a bra right now? Like, what is wrong with you? And I'm like,
underwear, same thing. Wait, why are you wearing underwear right now? Yeah, I get that too.
Yeah, but now I have to remind our daughter before she leaves the house, hey, you wearing underwear? Like, we should probably wear underwear when we leave the house.
Raising her to be free, it's fine.
Yeah. It's most circumstances. Yeah. Well, I mean, we're coming up on 3 hours already.
Man, now I understand how this happens.
Yeah. Blink and you're like 3 hours later.
Yeah. Do you have anything special that, you know, that you'd like to touch on? But I don't want to take up your entire day. It's going to get dark there soon. I feel like it's already like we can see the sun setting there.
Would you say 3:30 or something?
Yeah, 2 o'clock there. You know,
Yeah, no. Yeah, this time literally flew by. I can't think of anything else. I feel like we talked like a lot of things that people usually have questions and I like to talk about. So yeah, I don't have anything else to add really.
Are you taking clients right now on your personal business?
Yeah, I am. I typically I don't ever accept a big influx of clients because I really like to like get to know and work with a client before I like add on more to my plate. So usually I just have clients inquire if they're still interested. I can let them know like, hey, I'll take you now, or like I'll take you in like 2 or 3 weeks once I finish like establishing a client. So, but yeah, right now I'm still taking clients.
Where can people find you?
Yeah, so usually Instagram's the easiest way, and I'm Sento Fitness on Instagram, and you can like message me, you can click the email. Those are usually the 2 easiest ways to get a hold of me.
Good deal. We'll make sure it's in the description and whatnot as well, so people can find you easily.
Perfect. Thank you.
Anything else? Do you have anything else, Tony?
Thank you so much.
I do, but it's nothing to contribute to it. It's just something goofy and funny that I thought of. Well, I'll say it, I guess. Originally, when I heard your name when you were like Becky, and then you were like talking about Instagram and Becky's butt, all I could think of was Sir Mix-a-Lot. That, oh my God, Becky, look at her butt.
Seriously.
It's been in my head the entire time. I had to get it out.
She's so strong, and then she'll post these pictures, and I'm like, look at that. She's so strong, but she's also super lean, and she just made 4 bagels. I know she ate 2 of them. Like, it's super cool to be able to see that, and I don't know. I can appreciate beauty of like the strength, and it's just super cool.
There's a lot of balance there.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's impressed us is the balance. So
yeah,
you keep it up, and we really appreciate your time.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Gosh, it was great to talk with you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Likewise, and come back again. Maybe sometime when you're in Ohio, we could see you in person.
Like in person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be fun.
Columbus is what, 2 hours? We'll come to you.
Yeah.
We'll go to Columbus. You know, once things are open.
Yeah, once people can see each other.
Once
in person.
COVID, fingers crossed, dies down.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Very
good
cool.
deal. Well, I appreciate and enjoy the last little bit of sunshine that you have for the next, hour and a half?
Yeah, right? All right. Well, perfect. It was good to talk with you guys.
Likewise.
Thank
we'll talk
you.
to you later.
All right. See ya.